My fiancé called my mother a whore to her face. His uncle was the one paying her. But somehow, my family carries all the shame. Let me explain. I broke off a 6-year engagement after my fiancé's family discovered my mother used to be a sex worker, and the only reason they found out is because his uncle Tomas was one of her former clients. Instead of holding him accountable, they came after me, called me a gold digger, and told me the only way I could keep my ring was to erase my mother from my life completely. So I gave the ring back. I'm 26. Javi, my now ex-fiancé, is 27. My mother is Rosalina, the woman who starved so I could eat. Tomas is the married man who hired her and then let his whole family destroy her for it. And Senora Delgado is my boss, who turned out to be more family than anyone sharing Javi's last name. Number, Part 1, the dinner. To understand how everything collapsed, you need to understand what my mother built from nothing. Rosalina was 19 when my father left. I was 6. My brother was barely 1. We lived in a 2-room apartment with a stove that worked half the time and a landlord who worked the other half, knocking on our door asking my mother if she had other ways to cover rent. She did not finish secondary school. She could clean houses, wash clothes, cook for neighbors. She did all of it. And when all of it wasn't enough, she did more. I didn't know what more meant until I was 16. She told me herself, sitting on the edge of my bed, her hands folded so tight her knuckles looked like stones. She said she needed me to hear it from her and not from the street. She said it lasted 4 years. She said she stopped when I was 10, when she got steady work at a textile factory. She said she was sorry. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. I meant it then. I mean it now. By the time I met Javi, I was 20. Working reception at Senora Delgado's logistics firm during the day, finishing my business degree at night. Javi was studying engineering. He was kind, patient, the kind of man who remembered what you said 3 conversations ago and brought it up like it mattered. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. I said yes before he finished the sentence. 6 years. 6 years of Sunday dinners with his parents at birthday parties and holiday toasts and his mother kissing my cheeks and calling me times Mija asterisk. 6 years of building a life that felt for the first time like something permanent. His family knew I came from poverty. They knew my mother raised us alone. They considered themselves generous for accepting that. What they didn't know, what Javi didn't know, was the specific shape of my mother's survival. I had thought about telling him. Dozens of times. But every time I rehearsed the words, I heard the silence that would follow, and I couldn't do it. That silence terrified me more than any secret. The dinner was Javi's idea. His uncle Tomas had just returned from working in Monterrey for years. You've never met him properly, Javi said. He's my favorite uncle. You'll love him. It was a Saturday. I wore the green dress Javi liked. My mother came because Javi's mother had specifically invited her. A gesture of inclusion that, looking back, makes everything worse. We arrived at 7. The house smelled like mole and candle wax. Javi's parents greeted us warmly. His cousins were loud and welcoming. And then Tomas walked in from the kitchen, holding a beer, smiling wide, and my mother's hand seized my wrist so hard I almost dropped the salad bowl. I looked at her face. Every drop of blood had left it. Mama, we need to go, she whispered. Her voice was flat, mechanical. Right now. Please. What? We just got. Ahora. I didn't understand. I looked at Tomas. He was staring at my mother with an expression I couldn't read. Something between recognition and panic quickly smoothed into a polite smile. He extended his hand. You must be the bride's mother. A pleasure. My mother did not take his hand. She pulled me toward the door and told Javi's mother she was feeling sick. We left within 4 minutes of arriving. In the car, she wouldn't speak. She gripped the steering wheel and drove with her jaw locked, and when we got home, she went straight to her room and closed the door. I heard her crying through the wall for 2 hours. She told me the next morning. Tomas had been a client. multiple times. She recognized him immediately. My stomach dropped into a place I didn't know existed. "Does he know who you are?" I asked. "He knew," she said quietly. I saw it in his face. Javi came to our apartment that evening. He didn't knock. He pounded. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. His eyes were swollen. His voice was shaking, not with sadness, but with something hotter, something that had been fed to him by people who had hours to shape his rage before he arrived. "Your mother," he said, "is the woman who almost destroyed my uncle's marriage." Javi. Did you know? This whole time, did you times no times she was a whore? He said it like he was spitting out glass. "Did you know your mother was a whore and you just thought you'd marry into my family and nobody would ever find out?" My mother appeared behind me in the hallway. She had heard everything. "Javi, please," she said. Her voice was so small. "Please don't punish her for what I did. She didn't know about Tomas. You have times no right times to speak to me," he pointed at her. His finger was trembling. "You people, you think you can she's probably going to invite men to the wedding just like you did for a living." The sound my mother made was not a word. It was something leaving her body. I stepped between them. "Get out. You're a gold digger. Your whole family. Asterisk. Get out of my house. Asterisk." He left. The door slammed so hard the picture frame in the hallway, the one of my mother holding me as a baby, cracked down the middle. 3 days of silence. Then Javi called. His voice was softer, controlled. He said he'd been carried away by his emotions. He said he loved me. He said his family was willing to move past it. My chest ached. Not gonna lie, I loved him too. 6 years doesn't evaporate because of one terrible night. I wanted to get past all this. "There's one condition," he said. I closed my eyes. I already knew. My family doesn't want your mother at the wedding, or the engagement party, or any family events going forward. It's too painful for Tomas and his wife. Too painful for times, Tomas asterisk. She can still be in your life, Javi added quickly, like he was offering a concession. Just not in ours. Not publicly, you understand. I held the phone and stared at the cracked picture frame I still hadn't replaced. My mother in that photo was 20 years old, holding a baby she would starve for, smiling like the future was something she could trust. I need to think, I said. But I wasn't thinking. Something much quieter than thought was already moving through me, settling into my bones, rearranging everything I believed about what love was allowed to cost. I spent 2 days carrying that phone call like a stone in my chest. I went to work. I filed invoices. I answered calls. Senora Delgado asked me twice if I was okay, and twice I smiled and said yes, and twice she looked at me like she knew I was lying, but respected me enough not to push. At home, my mother moved through the apartment like a ghost, trying not to haunt anyone. She cooked dinner I didn't eat. She cleaned surfaces that were already clean. On the second night, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the thing I had been dreading more than Javi's ultimatum. Accept his terms. I looked up. If he loves you and you love him, accept it. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. She was gripping a dishcloth like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I don't need to be at the wedding. I don't need to be at anything. You have worked too hard for this life, times Mija asterisk. Don't throw it away because of me. Mama. I knew this would happen someday. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. I knew my past would come for you, and I told myself that when it did, I would step aside. So I'm stepping aside. She meant it. That was the worst part. She had rehearsed this surrender for years, maybe decades, waiting for the moment her daughter's happiness would require her disappearance. She was offering to erase herself like it was a gift. I reached across the table and took her hands. The dishcloth fell between us. "You starved so I could eat," I said. "You worked jobs that broke your body. You did things that broke your times, Spirit Asterisk. And you did all of it so I could be sitting here in this apartment with a degree, with a future. And now you're telling me the price of that future is pretending you don't exist." She didn't answer. Her chin trembled. "No," I said. "No." I called Javi the next morning. Asked him to meet me at the park near his apartment, the one where he'd proposed under the jacaranda tree that dropped purple petals on us like the world was celebrating. He arrived looking hopeful. He'd shaved. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. He reached for my hand. I gave him the ring instead. He stared at it in his palm like it had materialized from nowhere. "What is this?" "I can't marry someone who needs my mother to disappear." "I told you she can still be in your..." "You called her a whore, Javi." To her face. In her own home. I apologized for that. You apologized. And then told me the condition for your forgiveness is that she becomes invisible. That's not an apology. That's a renovation. You're just rebuilding the same house with nicer paint. He closed his fist around the ring. His jaw worked. I could see him cycling through responses, anger, reason, bargaining, and I realized I was watching him do exactly what he'd done on the phone. Performing love with conditions. Offering a version of us that required amputating the person who made me possible. My uncle's marriage almost ended because of her, he said quietly. Your uncle hired her, Javi. He was married, he sought her out. He paid. And when he got caught, your family blamed the woman who was trying to feed her children, not the man who was cheating on his wife. You know that. You times no times, that's what happened. Something shifted in his face. Not agreement, recognition. The brief involuntary flicker of a man seeing a truth he'd already decided not to accept. So that's it, he said. 6 years. 6 years, I said. And I would have given you 60. But not like this. I walked away under the jacaranda tree. No petals fell. It wasn't the season. The fallout was nuclear. Javi's family told their version first, which meant their version became the truth. Mutual friends called not to ask what happened, but to tell me I was making a huge mistake. People who didn't know the full story questioned whether I had been a sex worker too. The whisper network in our community moved faster than fact. Someone from Javi's extended family posted in a religious Facebook group about women who trap good men, and though they didn't use my name, they didn't need to. Everyone knew. I never thought I would get more support from strangers than from people in my own community. I was expecting hate toward my mother. There was some, but less than I'd braced for. The cruelty came from closer. Friends I'd known for years went silent. My brother, 21 and just starting university, called me panicking because someone had messaged him about it. His voice cracked and I heard my mother's worst fear playing out in real time, her past, reaching her children like a hand from a grave she thought she'd buried. Senora Delgado called me into her office on a Tuesday. She closed the door. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew, because small towns are small in the worst ways. I have a position opening in the Guadalajara office, she said. Same role. Slight raise. There's an apartment in the building where my sister-in-law rents units. 2 bedrooms. Reasonable. She slid a paper across her desk. If you want it. Senora. You don't owe me an explanation. You don't owe anyone an explanation. She took off her glasses and looked at me with something that wasn't pity. It was fury, quiet, controlled, directed at every person who had made this necessary. You are a good employee and a better woman than most people in this town deserve to know. Take the transfer. I took the transfer. We moved on a Sunday. My mother and I packed the apartment in silence, filling boxes with the artifacts of a life we were leaving behind. My brother helped carry furniture to the truck. When we were done, my mother stood in the empty living room and pressed her palm flat against the wall like she was saying goodbye to the building itself. Hobby called for 2 months. Not angry anymore, confused. I think he genuinely could not understand why the gold digger had walked away from the gold. The calls got shorter. Then they stopped. I heard through a cousin that he was seeing someone his family had introduced him to. I hope she never had to meet Tomas. Then, 3 weeks into our new life in Guadalajara, the apartment still half unpacked. My mother just starting a job at a bakery. My brother settling into a transferred enrollment. My phone buzzed with a Facebook message from a name I hadn't seen in 20 years. My father. Wanting to reconnect. Saying he'd heard we were going through a tough time and he wanted to be there for us. I stared at the message for a long time. Another man who disappeared when things were hard and resurfaced when the hardest part was over. I closed the app. I went to the kitchen where my mother was teaching herself a new bread recipe from a YouTube video, flour on her nose, humming. Something I hadn't heard her hum in months. I sat down beside her. I didn't mention the message. Some doors stay closed. I quit a 6-figure career so my wife could chase her nursing dream. I cooked every meal, drove every carpool, attended every parent-teacher night because that's what you do when your partner says she needs you to hold down the fort. Turns out the only thing she needed me to hold down was the lie. So here's the short version. My wife spent months telling me her hospital was a war zone of drama between 2 feuding coworkers, and I believed every word. What she didn't count on was one of those coworkers sending me videos that proved my wife's demanding career was really a cover for a full-blown affair with a doctor, and when she tried to weaponize our own kids against me, they'd already chosen sides long before I ever found out. I'm 41, a stay-at-home dad who traded his career for his family. My wife is Maya, 38, a nurse I trusted with my whole life. The other man is Dr. Henry, a resident at her hospital, who apparently had a reputation I was the last to learn about. Then there's Dr. Kia Henry's ex, who became the most unlikely messenger I've ever gotten a text from. My best friend Marcus tried to warn me with a joke that wasn't really a joke. And my 3 kids, my 1 2-year-old son, and my 1 0-year-old twin daughters, they saw everything before I did. They just loved me enough to wait until I was ready. Part 1, the catalyst and the escalation. The first thing that changed was the perfume. Maya had worn the same vanilla body spray since nursing school, cheap, reliable, something she grabbed at CVS without thinking. Then one Tuesday in March she came home, smelling like bergamot and sandalwood, something dark and deliberate. I noticed it when she leaned past me to grab a water bottle. I didn't say anything. You don't interrogate your wife over perfume. You file it somewhere in the back of your skull and keep seasoning the chicken. But things kept filing. She started buying clothes on her lunch breaks, not scrubs, not the comfortable leggings she lived in on days off. Fitted dresses, a leather jacket. Heels that clicked on her kitchen tile like a stranger walking through my house. She'd try them on in the bathroom mirror with the door mostly closed, turning sideways, sucking in her stomach, doing that thing with her lips women do when they're imagining someone else seeing them. Her phone moved to her pocket. It had always lived on the kitchen counter, face up, ringer on. Now it was glued to her hand, tilted at angles I couldn't read, buzzing with notifications she'd glance at and then kill with her thumb. She started sleeping with it under her pillow. I know, because I felt it vibrate against the mattress at 1 a.m. one night. And she rolled over so fast to silence it that her elbow caught my ribs. "Work group chat," she muttered. "Go back to sleep." My son noticed before I admitted it to myself. One Saturday morning, Maya left for a half shift wearing mascara and earrings. My boy watched her pull out of the driveway, then looked at me over his cereal bowl. "Mom doesn't wear earrings to work. She says they're an infection risk." I told him she probably had a meeting. He didn't blink. "She's been having a lot of meetings." The twins were quieter about it, but I'd catch them exchanging looks, the private language twins develop that locks everyone else out. When Maya missed their dance recital in April, they didn't cry. They just nodded at each other like a theory had been confirmed. I finally said something in late April. Gently. "The way you approach a conversation you're terrified of. You seem different lately." "Distracted? The kids are noticing?" Maya's face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds, surprise, irritation, then something rehearsed and soft. She sat down next to me on the couch and took my hand. "Baby, I'm sorry. Work has been a nightmare." She told me about 2 co-workers, Dr. Henry and Dr. Kia, who'd been in a relationship that imploded. Now they were at each other's throats on the floor, dragging everyone into it. Kia was jealous and vindictive. Henry was arrogant and retaliatory. Maya was caught in the middle, stressed beyond belief, and she was sorry if it was bleeding into home life. She kissed my forehead, made love to me that night for the first time in 3 weeks. I bought it. Every syllable. The oscillation started after that. Warm Maya would surface for 4 or 5 days after any confrontation, cooking with me, playing with the kids, leaving her phone on the counter like a peace offering. Then she'd drift. The phone would migrate back to her pocket. The late shifts would multiply. Cold Maya would return wearing that perfume, texting under the dinner table, laughing at something on her screen she never shared. Then came the nights out with Kia. "We're actually becoming close," Maya told me, pouring wine into a travel tumbler. She's going through it, and honestly, girl time helps me decompress too. Every Thursday. Sometimes Saturdays. She'd come home loose and flushed, smelling like bar air, and something else I couldn't name. I asked Marcus about it once, half joking during a basketball game at his place. He didn't laugh. "Brother, you sure she's not seeing someone more handsome?" I threw a chip at him. "Come on." He held his hands up. "I'm just saying. My cousin's wife pulled the exact same playbook. Girls' nights. New wardrobe. Phone on lockdown." He looked at me with something I didn't want to identify as pity. "Just pay attention." In June, Maya announced a training trip to Denver. 3 days. The hospital was sending a small group for a critical care certification update. "I'll drive myself to the airport." "You've got the kids." "I can drop you off." "It's no trouble." "Babe, it's a 5 a.m. flight. Don't wake the kids for that." She packed a suitcase that included the leather jacket and the heels. I watched her zip it shut and felt something cold settle in my chest. She was gone for 3 days. Her phone went to voicemail twice on the second night. She texted back an hour later, times, "Sorry, sessions ran late, exhausted. Love you." Asterisk. She came home at 11 p.m. on the 3rd day. Not from the airport, from the wrong direction. I didn't say anything. She showered immediately. I didn't say anything about that either. But the next morning, I drove to the hospital. I told the front desk receptionist I was Maya's husband, that I wanted to drop off a surprise lunch for her return from Denver. The receptionist frowned and typed something into her computer. Maya wasn't on any training trip. She's been on personal leave since Tuesday. The floor tilted. I thanked her. I drove home. I sat in the driveway for 40 minutes with the engine running. That night, I asked Maya how Denver was. She described the sessions, the hotel, the bad conference, coffee details. So specific they felt scripted. I nodded. Then I mentioned casually that I'd stopped by the hospital. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. The receptionist said you were on personal leave, not a training trip. And she started giving explanations. She said that the receptionist had no idea about what was going on inside the floor. I patiently listened to her and then told her that the receptionist had gotten the information from Dr. Kia. Maya got furious at this and said that Kia was an evil woman and she deliberately lied to put her in trouble. I said okay and ended the conversation. I could have asked for the evidence that she was in Denver, some training badges, ID cards, or anything else that proved she was there, but God knows why I avoided the conversation. I had a gut feeling that she was lying. She was not on that work trip. But I wasn't ready for that truth, so I avoided asking for any such details. 2 days passed and that feeling was choking me up. I regretted every second of silence. I regretted the way I'd said okay, like a man swallowing a razor blade and calling it dinner. On the third day, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Asterisk. Hi. This is Dr. Kia. I work with your wife. I'm sorry to contact you like this, but there are things you need to see. I have videos. Asterisk. I met Dr. Kia at a coffee shop 14 miles from the hospital. She picked the distance on purpose. She was younger than I expected, sharp eyes, no makeup, the kind of exhaustion that lives in the jaw. She slid into the booth across from me, placed her phone face down on the table, and said, "I'm not doing this to be kind. I want you to know that up front." Then why? Because Henry did the same thing to me. And your wife watched it happen and said nothing. So now I'm saying something. She told me everything. The timeline. The mechanics. The architecture of it. Maya and Henry had started flirting in January. Small things coffee, runs inside jokes on the floor. By February, Maya was drunk at a staff happy hour, telling Kia's friend that Henry was the most thrilling man she'd ever been around. By March, they were using empty patient rooms on the third floor during shift overlaps. Kia knew because the security footage timestamps matched their coordinated breaks, same rooms, same 15-minute windows, doors locked from inside. They got smarter after April, Kia said. Started taking personal leave on the same days. Always Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thursdays. Girls' night with Kia. My hands were flat on the table. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. Denver, I asked. There was no Denver. Kia unlocked her phone. They checked into the Marriott on Elm, 2 nights, 1 room. She showed me the videos. 2 of them. The first was security footage from the hospital hallway, Maya and Henry, disappearing into room 314, his hand on the small of her back, her looking both ways first like a teenager sneaking out. The second was a photo Kia's friend had taken at the Marriott bar, Maya, in the leather jacket Henry's arm around her waist. Both of them laughing with their faces close enough to share breath. I stared at the photo until the edges blurred. She told me you were evil, I said quietly. That you were lying to destroy her. Kia laughed short, bitter, the kind that comes out when crying isn't available. Of course she did. I drove home with the windows down because the car felt too small for my body. I parked. I walked inside. Maya was folding laundry on the couch watching a cooking show, looking so ordinary it made my teeth ache. We need to talk. She looked up. Read my face. Set down a pillowcase. I spoke with Kia. Baby. I saw the videos. The room changed temperature. Maya's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her hands moved to her lap and gripped each other like 2 people drowning. Those are fake. She's... Maya. She manipulated. I saw the Marriott. I saw room 314. I saw his hand on your back. Silence. The cooking show host was explaining how to deglaze a pan. I picked up the remote and turned it off. What followed was the most clarifying 40 minutes of my life. Maya cried. Then she confessed. Then she rewrote the confession. Then she confessed again. It had been going on since February. 5 months. The Denver trip was 2 days in a hotel room that she described with breathtaking audacity as breakup sex. I was ending it. That trip was me ending it. You spent 2 days in a hotel room to end it. It's complicated. It's not. He made the first move. You need to understand that. Henry pursued times me asterisk. I didn't know what I was missing, and he. What you were times missing asterisk. She heard it. She heard what she'd said. Her hand flew to her mouth like she could push the words back in. That's not what I quit my job for this family. I cook every meal. I drive every carpool. I show up to every recital you skip. My voice was quiet. That scared her more than yelling would have. And you didn't know what you were times missing, asterisk? I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I called my attorney. The divorce papers arrived on a Friday. Maya stared at them on the kitchen island like they were a diagnosis. You can't do this. Think about the kids. I am thinking about the kids. They need their mother. They need a parent who shows up. They've had one. She played her last card that Sunday. I came home from grocery shopping to find all 3 children sitting on the couch in a row, Maya standing behind them with red eyes and a trembling chin. Daddy, my son started his voice mechanical. We want you to stay together. We want to be a... My youngest daughter tugged his sleeve. He stopped. She looked at me with those enormous brown eyes and said, Mom told us to say that. She practiced it with us in the car. Maya's face collapsed. My son exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. Dad, we already talked about this. Just us. We want to live with you. We voted, his twin sister added. It was 3-0. I looked at Maya. She had nothing left. No allies, no alibis, no audience willing to believe her. The divorce was finalized in 11 weeks. Maya didn't fight for custody, not after I told her calmly, privately, that if she contested anything, the videos would reach both families. She signed everything. I kept the house full custody, no alimony. She moved into an apartment across town. The kids visit her on holidays. They're polite about it. They pack overnight bags and go without complaint, and they come home the next day and exhale the same way my son did on that couch, like they've been holding something tight and can finally let go. My boy asked me once if I was angry at their mom. I thought about it honestly. I was. Now I'm just tired. He nodded. That's kind of the same thing, Dad. He's 12. He shouldn't be that smart. But someone raised him right, and it wasn't the woman who practiced apology scripts in the car with children she called grown-ups who can take care of themselves. Marcus came over last week with beer and basketball. Halfway through the second quarter, he looked at me sideways. You good? I thought about the bergamot perfume, the leather jacket, the fork frozen halfway to her mouth. I thought about my daughter pulling her brother's sleeve. 3-0. Yeah, I said. I'm good. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't lying. I stole her from her boyfriend. I knew exactly what I was doing. I saw the crack in their relationship and I wedged myself into it. 8 years later, I'm building cardboard walls inside my own house to separate myself from the woman I fought so hard to win. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about choosing a partner who is willing to betray someone for you. That ability doesn't expire, it just finds a new target. I came home, found one text message on her phone, one surviving message after she'd scrubbed the rest, and my entire marriage collapsed in a single sentence from a coworker describing my wife's body like she belonged to him. I'm 36. My wife is Andrea. She's 34, mother of our 2-year-old son. The guy she slept with is Derek, some opportunistic colleague from her office. Then there's Cairo, 33, a woman I started seeing while still living under the same roof as Andrea. And somewhere in the background is Neil, Andrea's ex-boyfriend, the guy I deliberately took her from all those years ago. He's probably laughing right now. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the beginning is where the rot started. I met Andrea at a house party in 2016. She was with Neil, quiet conservative Neil, who wore khakis to barbecues and thought a bold Friday night meant ordering Thai instead of Chinese. They'd been together 3 years. He was safe. She was bored. And I could see it in the way she laughed too loud at my jokes, the way her eyes stayed on me 2 beats longer than they should have when Neil was mid-sentence about his accounting firm. I didn't stumble into their relationship. I detonated it. Neil had cheated on her once. A drunken mistake at a work conference, the kind of thing couples either survive or don't. Andrea was in the trying to survive it phase when I showed up. I became her confidant, her emotional outlet, the guy who said all the things Neil was too emotionally stunted to articulate. I told her she deserved someone who would never make her feel second. I told her Neil's infidelity was a character flaw, not a mistake. I told her she was settling. Every word was calculated. Every late-night phone call, every accidental coffee run near her office, every carefully timed text that arrived right when I knew Neil would be at his most neglectful. I was engineering a theft, and it worked. She left Neil on a Tuesday. She was in my bed by Thursday. I married a woman who was willing to betray someone for me and told myself the betrayal was justified because I was the better man. 8 years. A wedding. A mortgage. A son named Marcus who has her eyes and my stubbornness. 8 years of building something I thought was unshakable because I'd convinced myself the foundation wasn't rotten. Then came the text. I wasn't snooping. Marcus had a fever, Andrea was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I picked it up to check if it was her mother calling back about the pediatrician recommendation. Instead, I saw a message from Derek. Work. That read, "Times I can still feel your thighs around me. When can I see you again? Asterisk. One message. One surviving message in an otherwise empty thread. No prior conversation. No build-up. Just that sentence, sitting alone like a confession someone forgot to burn. My hands didn't shake. That's the part I remember most clearly. I set the phone down, poured Marcus's apple juice, and waited. When Andrea came out of the bathroom toweling her hair, I held the phone up and said, "Who's Derek?" The color left her face in stages. Forehead first, then cheeks, then lips. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It's not. Don't. I was going through something. After Marcus was born, I felt invisible. I felt like my body wasn't mine anymore, like I was just... How many times? 3. It was 3 times. It's over. I ended it 2 weeks ago. The messages are deleted. I know. You deleted them because you knew. She didn't answer. She just stood there, dripping onto the hardwood floor we'd picked out together, and I thought, times, this is exactly what Neil felt. This is exactly what I did to Neil. Asterisk. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I went to the garage, pulled out the moving boxes we'd never recycled, and started building. Cardboard walls. I'm not kidding. I sectioned off the living room with flattened boxes, duct tape, and a level of architectural commitment that probably should have alarmed me. I created a doorway schedule. She enters through the front. I use the side entrance. Kitchen from 6 to 7 is hers. 7 to 8 is mine. The bathroom has a color-coded lock system involving hair ties on the doorknob. People ask me later times, if you're already so hell-bent on not getting back together and even considering dating, why stay in that house? What are you holding on to, asterisk? I didn't have a good answer. Marcus, maybe? The mortgage? The stubborn, irrational belief that if I left first, she won? I needed her to watch me, not need her. I needed her to live inside the wreckage. Andrea's mental and physical health kept deteriorating with time. She stopped eating full meals. Her physician recommended therapy. She started going, but she told no one else, not her parents, not her sister, not her friends. She feared embarrassment. The shame of it was eating her from the inside, and she was letting it. I couldn't watch that and stay silent. I called her mother. Andrea needs you right now. We're separating. I told Andrea she could tell them we'd grown out of love instead of the truth. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes and whispered, "Why would you protect me?" I didn't answer because the honest answer was ugly. I wasn't protecting her. I was protecting the version of our story where I remained the good one. Her parents moved into the guest room for 2 weeks. Her mother cooked. Her father played with Marcus. Andrea started showering again, eating again, existing again. And I downloaded a dating app. That's where I found Cairo. Single mother, 1 son, recently divorced after her husband's affair. She understood damage. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. Our first date felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. 3 weeks into seeing Cairo, I invited her and her son over to the house for dinner. My side of the house. My kitchen window. My rules. I heard Andrea's bedroom door open upstairs just as Cairo's boy and Marcus started laughing together in the living room. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Then stopped. Andrea stood at the top of the stairs in a sweatshirt I recognized as mine, one I'd left behind in the laundry rotation we never properly divided. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked like she'd been sleeping, or trying to. Cairo's son had found Marcus's toy trucks, and the two of them were crashing them together on the living room rug, making explosion sounds with their mouths. Cairo was kneeling beside them, her hand on Marcus's back, helping him rebuild a tower so they could knock it down again. Marcus was laughing. That full-body toddler laugh where the joy takes over everything. Andrea watched this for exactly 11 seconds. I counted because I was frozen, holding a wooden spoon over a pot of pasta, watching her watch them. Then she turned and looked at me. No tears. No screaming. Just a look that said times. So, this is what you've been building toward. Asterisk. She went back upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. Not slam close. The quiet kind of closing that's worse. Cairo glanced at me. Was that her? Yeah. You okay? Yeah. I wasn't. But the pasta was boiling over, and Marcus needed his juice cup refilled, and Cairo's son wanted goldfish, crackers, and the mechanics of being alive carried me through the next 2 hours the way they always do. Cairo left at 8. She kissed me at the door, brief, careful, the kind of kiss someone gives when they know the walls have ears. I watched her buckle her son into his car seat and pull away, and then I stood in the doorway breathing cold air until my lungs hurt. Andrea was waiting in the kitchen when I came back inside, sitting at the table. My side of the table past the cardboard partition I'd built, like some deranged architect of emotional warfare. She seems nice, Andrea said. Don't. I'm not being sarcastic. She seems nice. Her son is sweet. Marcus liked him. I leaned against the counter. You're on my side of the wall. I know. She pressed her palms flat on the table. Her nails were bitten down to nothing. Is this what it's going to be? Other women in my house playing with my son while I... You signed the separation agreement. This house is shared space with designated... I know what I signed. Then you know I'm not doing anything wrong. She laughed. Not the laugh I fell in love with. Something thinner, more fractured. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing everything cruel. I didn't respond because she was right, and because the honest version of why I'd invited Cairo over, the version I wouldn't say out loud, was that I wanted Andrea to see it. I wanted her to feel the specific texture of being replaced while still being present. I wanted her to understand what I'd done to Neil, what she'd done to me, what this whole cursed cycle actually looked like from the outside. I wanted her to watch me not need her. The next morning I called my lawyer. He said what he'd been saying for weeks. Living together is just lingering. You're not healing. You're performing. He was right. Everyone was right. The cardboard walls, the kitchen schedules, the color-coded bathroom system, none of it was separation. It was a stage set I'd built so I could star in my own suffering. I started writing the letter that night. It took me 4 drafts. The first 3 were angry accusations dressed up as closure. The 4th was honest, which meant it was shorter and worse. Asterisk, Andrea. I manipulated you away from Neil. I saw a crack in your relationship and I pried it open because I wanted you, and I told myself wanting was the same as deserving. I built our marriage on the thing I now hate you for. I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know how to forgive me. I'm giving you the house for Marcus. My lawyer will handle the rest. I'm sorry for the cardboard walls. I'm sorry for bringing Cairo here. I'm sorry for calling your mother before you were ready. I'm sorry for every act of kindness that was actually control. Please tell Marcus I'll be back. Asterisk. I left it on the porch under a river rock on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday evening, I was on a flight to Anchorage. Alaska was not a plan. Alaska was a direction. I rented a cabin outside Seward from a guy who asked no questions and had no Wi-Fi. For 3 weeks, I didn't speak to anyone except a cashier at a gas station and a dog that followed me on a hiking trail. Andrea signed the papers uncontested. My lawyer emailed me the confirmation. I read it on a borrowed phone at a public library in Kenai, sitting between a teenager doing homework and an old man reading newspapers. The most significant legal event of my life, absorbed in fluorescent silence. I gave her the house. She kept Marcus's room exactly as it was. I took a condo downtown 12 minutes away, close enough for drop-offs, far enough to breathe. Cairo and I still talk. We're not rushing anything. She told me once, I don't need you to be healed. I just need you to be honest about the wounds. I'm trying. Some days I manage it. Marcus is 2.5 now. I haven't seen him in 3 months. Tomorrow's the first visit. I bought him new trucks, the crashing kind he likes. I've rehearsed what to say if he's angry, if he cries, if he doesn't remember my voice. She was and is a cheater. I know that. But I'm the one who taught her the choreography. I pursued a woman who was willing to leave someone for me and then acted devastated when the pattern held. Not sure how you could love someone who was dishonest from the start, but I did because I was dishonest from the start too. If you have any advice to make my life better, kindly do so. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm not the villain either. I'm just a man sitting in a new apartment with toy trucks on the counter, hoping my son still knows my face, hoping Andrea finds whatever it was she was looking for in all those arms that weren't mine, and hoping without any guarantee that the cycle I set spinning 8 years ago has finally, mercifully stopped. My stepmother buried my father without telling me. No call, no text, nothing. She sealed him in the ground and then had the nerve to show up at my hotel room asking for money. So here's the short version. My dad's wife of 15 years treated me and my sister like we were trespassing in our own home until we finally left. When Dad died, she rushed the funeral so we'd miss it, then called us vultures for showing up. What she didn't know was that Dad had been planning his final move for years, and the lawyer had a letter that changed everything. I'm a 32-year-old guy. My sister is Claire. She's 28. My stepmother is Judy. Her daughter Brianna was 12 at the time. My uncle Gerald is the one who even told us Dad was gone. My girlfriend Megan drove with us through the night to get there. And my father was Richard, 65 years old, a quiet man who apparently had a lot more to say than any of us realized. To understand what Judy did at the end, you have to understand what she did at the beginning. My mother died on a Tuesday in March. Ovarian cancer. She was 43. I was 17. Claire was 13. We buried her in the cemetery behind the church where my parents got married, and my father stood at the graveside like someone had scooped out everything inside him and left just the shell standing there in a black suit. For about 6 months, it was the three of us. Quiet dinners. Claire doing homework at the kitchen table while Dad stared at the television without watching it. I'd hear him at night sometimes walking the hallway, stopping outside their bedroom door like he'd forgotten she wasn't in there anymore. Then one Saturday, he sat us down and told us he'd met someone. Her name was Judy. She was a receptionist at his doctor's office. She had a daughter named Brianna, who was about 2 at the time. He said Judy made him feel like he could breathe again. He said he hoped we'd give her a chance. 3 weeks later, they were married. I remember Claire looking at me across the living room when he told us, her eyes wide and glassy, her mouth slightly open. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. What do you say to a man who's drowning and tells you he's found a life raft? You don't slap it out of his hands, even if something about it doesn't float right. Judy was sweet at first, performatively sweet. She'd call me hun and ask Claire about school and make pot roast on Sundays. But only when Dad was in the room. The moment he left, went to work, stepped outside, drove to the hardware store, her face would just reset, like someone toggling off a light switch. Don't leave your shoes there. This isn't a frat house. Claire, I already told you not to touch my things in the bathroom. Do I need to put a lock on it? Your father works hard enough without you two making messes he has to come home to. Small things at first, then not small. She rearranged the house within the first month. Our mother's photos came down from the hallway. Too depressing, she told Dad. You need to heal, Richard. She redecorated the living room. Threw out the quilt Mom had kept on the couch since before I was born. When Claire cried about it, Judy told Dad that Claire was having adjustment issues and maybe needed therapy. Claire didn't need therapy. Claire needed someone to stop erasing our mother from every surface of the house. By the time Brianna was old enough to talk, she'd absorbed Judy's frequency perfectly. She'd walk into my room without knocking, take things off my desk, and if I said anything, she'd scream until Judy came running. Then it was my fault. Always my fault. She's a child. You're practically an adult. Act like it. I left at 18. Didn't even finish the summer after graduation. Packed 2 bags, drove to my Uncle Gerald's house 3 states away, and called Dad from the road. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I understand, son. That was it. 3 words? I wanted him to say times come back. Asterisk. I wanted him to say times I'll fix this. Asterisk. He said times I understand times, and the line went dead. Claire lasted 2 more years. She called me the night she left, sobbing so hard I could barely make out the words. She was 15. Judy had told her she couldn't go to a school dance because Brianna felt excluded. When Claire protested, Judy said, and I'll never forget this because Claire repeated it to me 3 times like she couldn't believe it herself. Your father chose this family. Maybe it's time you respect that. Asterisk, this time's family. As if Claire and I were the previous tenants, she moved in with her aunt on mom's side. Dad paid for it. He always paid. That was his language. Money, wired, tuition, covered, car insurance handled. Never a confrontation with Judy. Never a stand taken. Just checks written in silence like a man feeding birds through a window he refused to open. Years passed. I built a life. Got a job in logistics, met Megan, rented a place that felt like mine. Claire finished college, started teaching. We didn't talk about Dad much. It hurt too specifically. Then about 3 years ago, he just showed up. No warning. No call. He was standing outside my apartment building on a Saturday morning, thinner than I remembered, his hair gone fully white. He had a small suitcase. His hands were shaking. Thought I'd visit, he said. If that's okay. He stayed 4 days. Megan cooked dinner every night, and Dad sat at our small table like a man who'd wandered out of a desert and found water. He talked more than I'd heard him talk in years. He asked about my work. He asked Megan about her family, and when she told him she'd lost her own father at 16, something shifted behind his eyes. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. On the 3rd night, we were cleaning up after dinner, and he stopped drying a plate mid-motion. Just stopped. His chin buckled. He set the plate down, carefully gripped the counter, and said, I don't know how many more of these I get. I didn't say anything. I just stood next to him until his breathing steadied. He started visiting every few months after that. Sometimes he'd see Claire too. Each visit he looked a little smaller, a little grayer. His doctor had found something in his lungs. He was vague about it, the way he was vague about everything that mattered, but we could see it. The cough that wouldn't quit. The stairs he took one at a time. He never once mentioned Judy during those visits. Not once. Then Uncle Gerald called me on a Wednesday evening, his voice strange and tight. Your father's gone, he said. Died this morning. My legs gave out. I sat on the kitchen floor. Megan found me there. Gerald, I managed. The funeral, when is it? The silence on his end told me everything. It was Dad's neighbors who had informed Uncle Gerald when he saw all of us missing from the funeral. Uncle then informed the other relatives for us. I called Judy to ask about the arrangements. She didn't talk to me properly. Her daughter took the phone from her and said Judy was too distraught with the loss and wasn't in a state to talk, but none of them sounded depressed. My sister Megan and I left for the house immediately. We lived some 1,000 miles away, and it took us a while to reach that place. Uncle Gerald lived closer, so he was able to arrive before us. After reaching the house, he got to know from the neighbors that the body was already taken for burial, followed by the funeral. The neighbors also informed us that Dad was not keeping well for a long time. She'd buried him within 36 hours. No announcement. No waiting. She put my father in the ground like she was taking out the trash before company arrived. And when we finally pulled into that churchyard parking lot, exhausted, wrecked 12 hours on the road with nothing but coffee and silence, Judy was standing at the gate with Brianna beside her, arms crossed, waiting, like she'd been expecting us all along. Judy's mouth was already moving before we'd closed the car doors. Well, look who finally decided to show up. Claire was out first. She'd barely slept. Her eyes were swollen almost shut, and she walked toward Judy with the kind of stillness that comes right before something detonates. Where is he? Claire said. Judy tilted her head. Buried. Yesterday. Beautiful service. The people who actually cared about him were there. I felt Megan's hand on my arm. Steadying. I hadn't realized I was shaking. You didn't call us, I said. You buried our father and you didn't. I tried. Judy's voice was rehearsed, polished, smooth. I called. I reached out. You people are impossible to get a hold of when it's not about money. Brianna, 12 years old, and standing with her mother's exact posture, arms crossed, chin lifted, one hip cocked, said Mom was devastated and you weren't even here. Because nobody told us, Claire's voice cracked open across the churchyard. A couple walking the path near the old graves turned to look. He was our father, our time's father, asterisk, and you put him in the ground like what? Judy stepped forward. Like the man I took care of for 15 years while his own children couldn't be bothered, while you two were off living your lives and he was here sick, needing someone to drive him to appointments and sit with him at 3 in the Poplus morning when he couldn't breathe. The silence that followed was surgical. She knew exactly where to cut. Uncle Gerald appeared from behind the church, walking with a purpose that made his bad knee irrelevant. He'd been here since the previous evening, talking to neighbors, piecing together the timeline. He stopped beside me and put his hand on my shoulder. Didn't say a word to Judy, didn't even look at her. "The grave's in the back," he said quietly. "East side, near the fence." We walked. Judy called something after us, something about property and trespassing and lawyers, but the words dissolved in the distance. The grass was wet. The headstone wasn't up yet, just a temporary marker with his name on a small metal plate. Asterisk, Richard Allen Mercer. Asterisk. Claire dropped to her knees. The sound she made wasn't crying. It was something older than that, something from the center of her body. I stood behind her with my hand on her shoulder, staring at the freshly turned earth, and thought times I never got to see his face again. She took that from us. She took the last look. Asterisk. Megan stood a few feet back, giving us the space. When I finally turned around, her cheeks were wet, and she was pressing both hands over her mouth. The lawyer's office was downtown above a hardware store. Mr. Whitfield had contacted Gerald 2 days after the burial, said there was a reading, said attendance was required, specifically mine and Claire's. Judy was already seated when we arrived. She dressed up. Black dress, pearl earrings, her hair done. Brianna sat beside her playing on a phone. Judy didn't look at us when we walked in. She looked at Mr. Whitfield with the patient expression of someone waiting to collect what they were owed. Mr. Whitfield was a thin man with reading glasses and the demeanor of someone who had delivered bad news so many times it no longer registered on his face. He opened a folder, adjusted his glasses, and began. The house went to Judy. Temporary occupancy, 5 years. After that, it transferred to Claire and me jointly. Judy's smile held. The life insurance policy, $600,000, went entirely to Claire and me, split evenly. The smile flickered. The trust fund, built over decades, conservatively managed, valued at just over $400,000, went entirely to Claire and me. The smile died. That's Judy started. "There's a letter," Mr. Whitfield said without looking up. He produced an envelope, cream-colored, sealed with tape that had yellowed. My father's handwriting on the front. Just 2 words, times, my children. Asterisk. Judy stood up. "This is contestable. I was his wife for 15 years. I have rights. Mrs. Mercer," Mr. Whitfield said, and his voice was the quietest thing in the room. "Your husband updated this will 14 months ago. He was of sound mind. He sat in that chair," he pointed to the one I was sitting in, "and he was very specific about his wishes." A pause. Very specific. Judy grabbed Brianna's arm and walked out. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut with a small, precise sound that was somehow worse. She came to the hotel that night. Knocked softly. When I opened the door, her mascara was streaked, and her shoulders were curled inward, and she hugged me. Asterisk. Hugged me? Asterisk. Pressed her face into my chest and sobbed. "I loved him," she whispered. "I loved him so much. And now I have nothing. Brianna has nothing." I stood perfectly still. Let her perform. "I'm not asking for all of it," she said, pulling back, dabbing her eyes. "Just 30% of the trust for Brianna's future. She's a child she deserves." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out a single sharp bark of disbelief. "Claire," I called toward the adjoining room. "Come hear this." Claire appeared in the doorway. Judy looked between us, recalculating. 30%, I repeated for Claire's benefit. Claire's expression didn't change. She just slowly closed her eyes and shook her head. Judy's face reset. That same toggle. "Sweet to steal in half a second. You'll regret this," she said. "Both of you. You're just like him. Cowards who hide behind. Good night, Judy." I closed the door. Claire and I sat on the edge of the bed and I opened the letter. His handwriting was shaky, the letters climbing uphill the way they do when someone's hands won't cooperate. It took us 3 tries to get through it because one of us kept breaking down and the other would have to take over. He said he was sorry. He said he cursed himself every single day. He said marrying Judy was the act of a man so terrified of the dark that he grabbed the first hand he found, and by the time he realized whose hand it was, his children were already gone. He said the visits to my apartment were the only times in 15 years he felt like himself. He said Megan's pot roast reminded him of Mom's. He said, "Times I never stopped being your father. I just stopped deserving to be." Asterisk. We read it 100 times. We're still reading it. She left me a note on the refrigerator. Not a conversation, not a phone call, a note. Stuck between a takeout menu and a grocery list, like ending our marriage was just another errand she needed to check off, before catching her flight to LA with a younger man. 6 years later, that same woman showed up at my office looking like a ghost, 2 kids on her hip begging me for money and whispering that I still loved her. She was wrong, but my compassion almost cost me everything I'd rebuilt. I'm a 41-year-old man. My ex-wife is Lisa, she's 35 now. The guy she left me for is Leo, her younger, flashier upgrade, who turned out to be her worst nightmare. My current wife is Sophie, the woman who saved me and almost had to watch Lisa tear it all apart a second time. When Lisa and I were married, she had a way of making me feel like I was always one step behind some invisible standard she carried in her head. I worked as a financial consultant. Steady income, good benefits, a house we owned outright by the time I was 33. But steady wasn't enough. She wanted spontaneity. She wanted someone who didn't plan vacations 3 months in advance or get excited about a new spreadsheet template. She wanted Leo. Leo was 23 when she met him at a friend's birthday party. Tattoo sleeve startup founder, or so he claimed, drove a leased BMW and talked about crypto like it was a religion. I remember the night she came home from that party. She smelled like someone else's cologne and looked at me like I was furniture. 3 months later, the refrigerator note, asterisk, I need more than this. I'm sorry, don't contact me. Asterisk. She'd already packed while I was at work. Took the suitcases, the jewelry, half the savings account, left the house keys on the counter like a hotel guest checking out. I won't pretend I handled it with dignity. I didn't eat for 4 days. I called her 67 times. I know because I counted later, disgusted with myself. She blocked me on the 3rd day. The divorce papers arrived by certified mail 6 weeks later, filed from Los Angeles. She didn't ask for the house. She didn't ask for alimony. She wanted a clean cut. And I realized she wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me. It took 2 years of therapy, a career pivot into my own consulting firm, and a chance meeting at a bookstore before I started breathing again. Sophie was reading a book on behavioral economics, and I made some terrible joke about sunk cost fallacy in relationships. She laughed anyway. That laugh rebuilt me. We married quietly. A small ceremony, 20 people, a backyard in Vermont. Sophie was everything Lisa had called. Boring. She was consistent. She was present. She was warm in the mornings and patient at night. When our daughter was born, I held that tiny body against my chest and felt something seal shut inside me. A door I thought I'd never close. Then Lisa walked through it. She appeared in my office lobby on a Tuesday in March. My assistant buzzed me with a strange voice, said there was a woman who didn't have an appointment but was very insistent. When I stepped out, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who'd left me for a flashier life looked 10 years older than her age. Hollow cheeks, dark circles pressed deep beneath her eyes, hair pulled into a limp ponytail. She had a toddler on one hip and a baby in a stroller that had a cracked wheel. "Hi," she said, like we'd bumped into each other at a grocery store. My throat locked. I brought her into my office because I didn't know what else to do. She sat across from my desk, the same desk where I'd signed contracts that built my firm from nothing, and she cried for 11 straight minutes before she could form a sentence. The story came out in jagged pieces. Leo's startup was never real. He burned through her half of our savings within 8 months. When the money dried up, so did the charm. She discovered that he was sleeping with other women from his work. When she confronted him about the cheating, he admitted to having multiple hookups because Lisa wasn't that young and attractive to him anymore. She said things got so bad that he started hitting her and physically assaulting her. She'd had 2 children with him, neither planned, both used as leverage to keep her dependent. Lisa wanted me to help her financially. She said she was looking for a job, but hadn't found any luck yet. She hadn't worked for the last 3 months after she got pregnant with her first child years ago now, and the gap in her experience was blocking her from getting a decent job. And if all that wasn't enough, she told me, Leo never married her. He didn't believe in it. He had manipulated her into seeing commitment the same way he did as a cage. That's why she used to call me rudimentary, because I believed in vows, in structure, in staying, but now she said she regretted her decision because she realized what she'd thrown away. I stared at the woman sitting across from me and felt something I wasn't prepared for. Pity, not love, not nostalgia, just a heavy, nauseating pity that sat in my stomach like wet concrete. I gave her $30,000. I told myself it was for the children. Sophie listened that night with her arms crossed, our daughter asleep in the next room. She didn't yell. She just said, "You have a good heart. Don't let her eat it." I should have listened. 3 weeks later, Lisa texted me. A thank you at first, then a check-in, then a smiley face, then a heart emoji, then times I miss what we had. Do you ever think about us, asterisk? I didn't respond. But I didn't block her either. And that silence, that one hesitation, was the crack she'd been looking for. She showed up at my office again. This time she'd done her hair. Wore lipstick. Leaned across my desk and asked if I could help her with a deposit on a house. $60,000. Maybe $100. My phone buzzed while she spoke. A text from Sophie Times. She's there again, isn't she? Asterisk. I looked at Lisa's hopeful, calculated smile, and for the first time, I saw it clearly, the machinery behind the tears. But before I could answer, Lisa reached across the desk and grabbed my hand. You still love me, she whispered. I know you do. I pulled my hand back so fast, the pen cup on my desk rattled. Don't, I said. Lisa's fingers hovered in the air where mine had been, then slowly curled into her palm. The lipstick smile didn't falter. Not yet. I know you felt that, she said. I know you still. What I feel, I said, standing up, is embarrassed. For you, the smile cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but I saw it. The same way I used to see her micro-expressions when she was calculating whether to tell me the truth or a version of it. I gave you $30,000, Lisa. $30,000. You know what I told myself? I told myself it was for your children. That those kids didn't choose any of this and they deserved a chance. I called it compassion. Sophie called it compassion. My therapist probably would have called it something else. I'm grateful for that. You're not grateful. You're back. 3 weeks later, lipstick on, asking for $100,000 for a house deposit. That's not gratitude. That's a second appointment. She stood up too, and I watched the performance shift in real time. The softness drained from her face like water from a cracked glass. Something harder surfaced underneath. You have the money, she said. I've seen your office. I've seen your car. You built all of this after I left, and I'm not saying I deserve credit, but what? You think your leaving was the favor? You think walking out with a refrigerator note and half my savings was some kind of motivational speech? I made a mistake. You made a choice. There's a difference. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A choice is packing suitcases while your husband is at work, flying to Los Angeles with a 23-year-old who leased his personality along with his car, and then blocking my number after I called you 67 times begging you to come home. Her jaw tightened. I could see the tendons in her neck. You counted the calls. I counted everything, Lisa. The days I didn't eat. The sessions with a therapist who had to teach me how to sleep again. The months I spent wondering what was so fundamentally wrong with me that my wife would rather gamble on a stranger than stay with the man who paid off her house by 33. I said I regret it. You regret the outcome. Not the choice. You went back to him. Silence. The kind that has weight. Yeah, I said. I know. After that first visit, after you sat in that chair and cried for 11 minutes and told me about the cheating and the hitting and the manipulation, you went back to Leo, didn't you? Her eyes dropped to the desk. He said he'd changed. And when he hadn't changed, when he was still sleeping with other women from his work, still telling you that you weren't young and attractive enough for him, still hitting you, then you came back here. To me, the rudimentary one. She flinched at the word like I'd slapped her with it. I never should have called you that. No, you shouldn't have. But you did. You called me rudimentary because I believed in vows, in structure, in staying. You let Leo manipulate you into seeing commitment as a cage, and then you looked at me, the man who built that cage, with his bare hands, so you'd always have somewhere safe, and you laughed at me for it. My voice had risen. I didn't care. My assistant could hear. The walls were thin. Let them hear. You didn't come here because you missed me, Lisa. You came here because you ran out of options. Leo never married you. He didn't believe in it. He used you until you were inconvenient, and then he discarded you the exact same way you discarded me. The only difference is I left a door open and he didn't. That's not fair. Fair. You left a note on a refrigerator. You want to talk to me about fair? She grabbed her purse. Her hands were shaking, and for a split second I felt the old instinct, the one that wanted to reach out, steady her, fix it. But I watched that instinct the way you watch a match burn down to your fingertips. I let it hurt, then I let it go. The $30,000 was charity, I said, from a man who felt sorry for your children. That's all it was. That's all it ever was. You should be grateful I didn't throw you out on day one. You're cruel, she whispered. No. I'm done. She slammed the door hard enough to knock a frame off the wall. A photo of Sophie and our daughter at the Vermont house. I picked it up, checked the glass. Not broken. That evening I sat Sophie down at the kitchen table and told her everything. The hand grab. The whisper. The lipstick. The $100,000 ask. I held nothing back because I'd learned from years of therapy and one catastrophic marriage that the things you hide become the things that rot. Sophie listened with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that went cold while I talked. When I finished, she didn't speak for a long time. Are you done? She finally asked. Not angry. Genuine. Permanently. She nodded once. Then be done. The next morning I blocked Lisa's number. Every platform, email, social media, everything. I called my office manager and gave clear instructions if Lisa appeared again, she was not to be admitted. No exceptions. No messages relayed. I'd spent 6 years building something real from the wreckage of something hollow. A firm. A marriage. A daughter who grabbed my finger when she slept and held on like I was the safest thing in the world. I wasn't going to let the woman who taught me what abandonment felt like teach me the lesson twice. Lisa had wanted me to believe that her suffering entitled her to my life. That because Leo broke her the way she broke me, we were somehow even and the debt ran in her direction now. But misery isn't currency, and regret without accountability is just nostalgia with a price tag. Sophie was right from the beginning. I had a good heart, I just needed to stop letting the wrong person eat it. Lisa vanished after that. No calls from unknown numbers, no visits, no mutual friends carrying messages, just silence. The same kind she'd given me 6 years earlier, except this time, I was the one who chose it. I picked up the Vermont photo from my desk and set it back on the wall. Sophie's laugh in that picture. My daughter's tiny fist raised toward the camera. The door was shut, and this time I held the lock.
I'm not trying to say I'm a saint. I know what I did was wrong. My ex-husband Mark has probably told everyone his version where I'm the villain who threw our marriage away for some guy at work. And from the outside, I guess it looks that way. But stories are never that simple, are they? There's always the part you don't see. The quiet, lonely hours that lead up to the big explosion. Our marriage didn't die the day Mark found those texts. It had been dying a slow death for years, and I was just the one who finally pulled the plug. We got married young. I was 20 and he was 21. We were full of plans and ideas, thinking we had it all figured out. But life gets in the way. He got a good job, I got a job, and we settled into a routine. The problem with routine is that it can slowly sandpaper away all the interesting parts of a person until you're just left with a smooth, boring surface. I started to feel invisible. It wasn't one big thing, but 1,000 tiny cuts. It was him scrolling through his phone while I was telling him about my day. It was me making his favorite dinner and him not even noticing, just eating while watching TV. I'd ask him, "How was your day?" and get a fine. I'd try to start a conversation, maybe about a movie or something funny I saw online, and he'd give me a little nod, his eyes still glued to his screen. I felt like a ghost in my own house. I could have worn a clown suit to breakfast, and I don't think he would have looked up. The loneliness was the worst part. You can be in a room full of people and feel lonely, but there is no loneliness worse than sitting next to the person who is supposed to be your partner and feeling completely and utterly alone. The silence in our house was heavy. It wasn't a comfortable, peaceful silence. It was the silence of two strangers living in the same space, each inside their own little bubble. I tried. I really did. I suggested date nights, but we'd just end up at a restaurant, him on his phone, me staring at the breadbasket, wondering why I even bothered. I felt like I was starving, but for affection, for attention, for a simple conversation that didn't feel like a chore. Then Alex started at my work. He was just a guy in the next cubicle. At first, it was nothing. Just good morning and small talk by the coffee machine. But then he started to actually times C times me. He'd ask me a question and then actually listen to the answer. He noticed when I got a new haircut. He remembered I liked a certain kind of tea and would bring me a cup without me asking. They were such small things, but to a person dying of thirst, even a drop of water feels like an ocean. Our conversation started spilling over into texts. It was innocent at first. A funny meme about work, a complaint about our boss. Then it became more personal. We talked about our dreams, our frustrations, the things we were passionate about. I learned more about him in 2 weeks of texting than I'd learned about my own husband in the last 2 years. He made me laugh. A real deep belly laugh that I hadn't felt in forever. I would find myself smiling at my phone like a teenager. And a little piece of the old me. The me before the invisibility cloak started to come back. The feelings grew faster than I could control. I wasn't looking for an affair. I was just looking for a friend, a connection. But he was giving me everything I was missing at home. He made me feel smart and funny and seen. And yes, things got romantic. The texts went from friendly to flirty to more. One night, after a particularly long and silent evening with Mark, Alex and I were texting. He was telling me all the things he liked about me, and it was like he was listing everything Mark had stopped noticing years ago. In that moment, I felt so overwhelmed with gratitude and affection that I typed it. I love you. I know how that sounds, but it wasn't a lie. I loved the way he made me feel. I loved that he saw me. It was a desperate, messy kind of love born out of loneliness. One day, we were talking about how empty my house felt when Mark was at work. Mark works long 12-hour shifts, so I'm alone a lot. Half joking, I said, Alex should come over for coffee sometime just to make the place feel less like a tomb. He agreed, saying he'd love to. We even picked a day. But as soon as I sent the text, a wave of panic and guilt washed over me. This was a line. A real physical line I was about to cross. My heart was pounding. I couldn't do it. A few hours later, my hands shaking, I texted him and told him it was a bad idea and we couldn't. He understood. He never came over. We never even saw each other outside of work. It was just a stupid plan that never happened. But the texting continued. It was my secret little world where I wasn't a ghost. It was my escape. Last night was a typical Tuesday. Mark was on the couch, controller in his hands, completely absorbed in his video game. I was on the other end of the couch, phone in my hands, texting Alex. He'd sent me a stupid joke and I was smiling. A real smile. I typed out a reply and set my phone face down on the coffee table while I got up to use the bathroom. It was just for a minute. A single, careless minute. When I came back into the living room, the sound from the TV was off. The only noise was the low hum of the refrigerator. Mark wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He had turned his whole body to face the empty spot on the couch where I'd been sitting. He was just staring at me. His face was completely blank, but his eyes. There was a look in his eyes I had never seen before. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something colder, something broken. He didn't say a word. He just held up my phone. The screen was lit up. My heart dropped into my stomach. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the phone in his hand, my phone with my secret world lit up for him to see. I don't know which message was on the screen, the "I love you" or the one about Alex coming over. It didn't matter. They were all bad. "Who's Alex?" he asked. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, which was so much scarier than if he had yelled. My own voice came out shaky. "He's just a guy from work, Mark. It's not what you think." He let out a short, bitter laugh. It was a sound I'd never heard him make before. "Not what I think. It says, 'I love you.' It says he was going to come here, to our house, while I was at work." What am I supposed to think? And that's when the dam broke. All the years of frustration, of feeling invisible, of being so lonely I thought I would scream it all, came pouring out. "What were you supposed to think?" "I don't know, Mark. When was the last time you even looked at me? When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer?" "This has nothing to do with that," he shouted, finally finding his volume. He stood up, pacing back and forth in the small space between the couch and the TV. "You cheated on me! You were texting another man! You love him!" I was lonely, I screamed back, tears streaming down my face now. I felt like a piece of furniture in my own home. I would talk, and the words would just hit a wall. "You were here, but you were a million miles away in that stupid game or on your phone." Alex? He actually saw me. He talked to me. "So you were going to bring him into our bed?" he spat. And the words hit me like a slap. "He never came over. I told him not to. It was a stupid idea that I stopped. It was just texting, Mark. It was words because I couldn't get any from you." The fight went on for hours. It was ugly. We threw every resentment we had at each other, from the big things to the stupid petty things. He saw a liar and a cheater. I saw a man who had let our marriage starve to death and was only now noticing the body. By the end of it, we were both exhausted. There were no more tears or yelling, just a hollow, empty feeling in the room. We were broken. And for the first time, we both knew it. A few days later, after sleeping in separate rooms and barely speaking, he came to me and said, "We should try therapy." I think he expected me to say no to prove I didn't want to fix things. But I agreed. A tiny, foolish part of me hoped that maybe a stranger could translate for us, could make him understand what I had been trying to say for years. The therapy session was a disaster. We sat on a beige couch in a quiet office that smelled like old books. The therapist was a kind-looking woman who asked us to share our feelings. Mark went first. He calmly explained that I'd had an emotional affair, that I'd betrayed his trust. He laid out the facts, the text, the "I love you," the plan for a visit. It sounded so clinical, so simple. He was the victim, I was the villain. Then it was my turn. I tried to explain the loneliness, the invisibility. I tried to tell her about the silence, about feeling like a ghost. I stumbled over my words, trying to make her and Mark understand the deep ache that led me to it. But I could see the look on Mark's face. He wasn't hearing me. he was just hearing excuses. He crossed his arms, staring at the floor. The therapist nodded and said, "Trust is a very difficult thing to rebuild." It felt like she was siding with him, like the why didn't matter, only the what. I left that office feeling more hopeless than ever. We had spent an hour and $200 just to confirm what we already knew: we were on a completely different planet. That night, the house was silent again. But it was a new kind of silence. It was the silence of defeat. I sat on the couch, the same one where it had all blown up. And I felt that familiar loneliness creep back in, colder and sharper this time. And I did something stupid. I picked up my phone. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was the worst thing I could possibly do. But it was a compulsion, like scratching an itch until it bleeds. I needed to feel seen just for a second. I sent Alex a simple text, "I'm not okay." His reply came back almost instantly. "I'm here if you want to talk." And that was it. That's all it took. The therapy hadn't fixed the root problem. It just put a bandage on a gaping wound. Mark couldn't give me what I needed. The therapist couldn't give me what I needed. But Alex could. So I went back to the only source of water I could find in the desert, even though I knew it was poison. I don't know if Mark found out I was texting him again or if he just felt it. Maybe he could see that the tiny spark of hope we had was gone. About a week later, he sat down with me at the kitchen table. There was no anger left in his face, just a deep, unshakable sadness. "This isn't working, is it?" he said softly. I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "No. I don't think I can ever trust you again," he said. "And you're not happy. I see that now." It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. He finally saw me. But it was too late. We talked for a little while about logistics, about who would get what. It was calm and quiet. The fight was over. We were just two people who had hurt each other too much to go back. We decided to get a divorce. I'm not trying to say I'm a good person. I know I hurt him. I see that. I will carry the guilt of that with me forever. But I'm not the simple villain he probably paints me as. I'm just a person who made a terrible mistake because I was drowning and grabbed onto the wrong life raft. Our marriage was a house that was already rotting from the inside. I didn't set the fire, but I was the one holding the match when it all burned down. I'm the villain of his story. I know I am. The cheating college girlfriend who broke his heart disappeared, and then crawled back 15 years later when her own perfect life fell apart. If you heard it from his side, you'd call me a monster, and you'd probably be right. But I need you to understand why. Not to forgive me, but just to see how a person can make a choice that ruins everything and believe with their whole heart that they're doing the right thing. My life has never really been my own. It's always been a group project, and I was just the project manager. My parents, my friends, they were the board of directors. They gave the advice, they set the goals, and I executed the plan. And for most of my life, the plan worked. Then I met him in college, and it was the first thing that was ever truly mine. Loving him felt like breathing for the first time. He was handsome, I mean ridiculously so. The kind of handsome that makes you feel a little dizzy. But more than that, he was kind. He saw me in a way no one else ever had. With him, I wasn't a project to be managed. I was just me. It was thrilling and easy and felt more real than anything else in my life. It was also terrifying. My circle, my board of directors, saw him as a threat. A beautiful, charming, dangerous risk. My best friend Sarah would say, "Pretty boys like that always cheat. It's just a matter of time." My dad would ask, "What's his plan? What's his career path?" They saw his passion and his go-with-the-flow nature not as a strength but as a fatal flaw. They painted a future with him that was a rickety roller coaster fun for a while, but destined to fly off the rails. Then they presented me with Mark. Mark was sensible. He was in the business school, had an internship lined up, and his 5-year plan had a 10-year plan backup. He was nice enough, stable, grounded. He wasn't a spark. He was a savings bond. My friends loved him. My parents adored him. They saw him as the responsible investment, the guaranteed return. I was 20 years old, and everyone I had ever trusted in my entire life was telling me in 100 different ways that my love for my boyfriend was a mistake, and my security with Mark was the answer. I felt their unanimous decision pressing down on me, and I convinced myself their wisdom was better than my own heart. Trying to break up with him was impossible. My heart wasn't in it, so the words wouldn't come out right. Every time I'd try, he'd look at me with those honest eyes, ask me what was wrong, and I'd fall apart and fall right back into his arms. My weakness was obvious. My friends saw it. "He's never going to let you go," Sarah told me over coffee. "You have to do something he can't forgive. You have to burn the bridge so you can't run back across it." Their voices were in my head that night at the party. Their logic mixed with way too much cheap vodka felt like the only clear thought I had. I had to do something decisive. Something that would make him hate me. I needed him to be the one to end it because I was too much of a coward to walk away on my own. So I did it. I sabotaged us in the most brutal way I could think of. I started making out with a guy from our history class. Then another one. Then, and this is the part I can barely even think about, I kissed 2 of our mutual friends. I did it where I knew he could see. I wanted him to see. It was a monstrous, disgusting act, and the whole time I felt like I was watching someone else do it. In my panicked, terrified mind, it was the only way to force myself onto the right path they had all laid out for me. I shattered his heart to save myself from what they promised would be an even bigger heartbreak down the road. It worked. He left. And I married Mark. The safe life I chose wasn't a life. It was a cage. A pretty socially approved cage with a mortgage and 3 kids, but a cage all the same. My marriage wasn't a partnership. Mark didn't love me. He owned me like a stock that paid regular dividends. And when a younger, shinier stock caught his eye, he liquidated his assets. He left me and the entire foundation of my life. the one built on everyone else's good advice, crumbled into dust. In the middle of all that rubble, the only thing that felt real, the only thing that had ever been real, was the memory of him. One night, scrolling through my college alumni page on Facebook, his face popped up. It was like a physical shock, a gasp of air. After being underwater for 15 years, I sent him a message. I don't even remember what I wrote, just some stupid, clumsy apology. He actually responded. He agreed to talk on the phone. The moment I heard his voice, something inside me just broke. I started crying and I couldn't stop. It wasn't a performance. It was 15 years of regret and loneliness and grief exploding out of me at once. I think I scared him, but he agreed to meet me for coffee when he was in town. I saw him standing outside the restaurant, and he looked older, but he was still so much himself it hurt. The years just melted away. All the pain, all the bad advice, all the fear, it vanished. All I could feel was this desperate need to connect with the one person I had ever truly chosen for myself. So I ran to him. I threw my arms around him and just held on, burying my face in his jacket. For a second, there was nothing. He was stiff, a statue. Then slowly he put his hands on my arms and gently pushed me back. There was no anger in his face, not yet. Just a kind of tired sadness. "Let's go for a walk," he said, his voice quiet. We walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, the silence between us heavy and loud. I tried to start to explain, but the words were a jumble in my throat. He just sat there looking out at the trees, letting me struggle. He wasn't the boy I had betrayed anymore. He was a man, a stranger, and I had no idea what he was thinking. After a full minute of my pathetic stuttering, he finally turned and looked at me, really looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "Are you done?" he asked, his voice perfectly level. "Because I've been waiting a very long time to say a few things to you." His words hung in the air between us, sharp and cold. I just nodded. Because what else could I do? I'd spent 15 years living a life built on a lie, and he'd spent that same time living with the truth of what I did. He'd earned his turn to speak. I replayed that night in my head. For years, he started his voice low but steady, like he'd practiced this speech 1,000 times. I tried to figure out what I did wrong. Was I not paying you enough attention? Did I say something stupid? I tortured myself trying to find a reason, any reason that would make sense. He shook his head, a small bitter smile on his face. But there wasn't one, was there? It wasn't about me at all. It was about you. And them. He gestured vaguely, as if my friends and family were sitting on the bench with us. Did you all have a good laugh about it? Did Sarah pat you on the back for being so strong? Every word was a perfectly aimed dagger, and every one of them hit its mark. I deserved it. I deserved all of it. I flinched when he said Sarah's name. He remembered. Of course he remembered. And then you just vanish, he continued, his voice getting a little louder now. You marry Mr. Perfect, you get the house, the kids, the whole white picket fence dream you were all so obsessed with. And I'm just Collateral damage. A memory you get to delete. But I had to live with it. I had to see our friends, the same friends you kissed, and pretend it didn't feel like my insides were being ripped out. Tears were streaming down my face again, but this time I didn't make a sound. They were silent tears for him, for the boy I had destroyed, because I was too weak to fight for him. So, you'll have to forgive me if I'm not crying with you right now, he said, his voice laced with ice. You don't get to burn my world down, go live your perfect life, and then come back 15 years later when it doesn't work out and expect me to be your shoulder to cry on. Is that what I am to you? The backup plan. The one that got away trophy you want to put on your shelf now that the other ones are broken. No. I whispered the word, barely audible. It's not like that. Isn't it? He shot back. You chose them over me. You chose their advice, their approval, their safe plan over everything we had. And you're still choosing them. You know how I know. I looked at him confused. He pulled out his phone. Because your dad called me yesterday. Told me I should be a gentleman and hear you out. Said you'd made a youthful mistake. And Sarah, she sent me a message on Facebook, a whole paragraph, about how you were just scared and I should be the bigger person. They're still pulling your strings and you're still letting them. That's when I broke. It wasn't just shame anymore. It was a wave of disgust so strong it made me feel sick. He was right. He was completely devastatingly right. My father and my best friend, the architects of my first disaster, were already trying to engineer my next move. They saw me as a problem to be solved, and he was the solution they were pushing on me now. They hadn't changed, and in their eyes, neither had I. He saw the look on my face and stood up. I'm not a piece in your game. Not then and not now. I have a life, a good one. A life I built myself with a woman I trust. You don't get to show up and drop your baggage on my doorstep. He stood over me for a moment, and for the first time, I saw the anger in his eyes give way to a deep, profound sadness. It was the look of a man seeing a ghost. I hope you figure your life out, he said, his voice softer now. I really do. But you have to do it on your own this time. And then he walked away. He didn't look back. I just sat there on that park bench until the sun started to go down, feeling the weight of every bad decision I had ever made. His words echoed in my head. Times you're still letting them. Asterisk. He was right. My whole life I'd been a passenger. I let my friends and my family steer, and when they drove me off a cliff, I blamed them for the crash, instead of blaming myself for handing them the keys. Reaching out to him wasn't an attempt to win him back, not really. How could it be? I'm the woman who chose betrayal over love. I'm the woman who still has brunch with the very people who convinced me to ruin the best thing I ever had. He sees that. He sees that I haven't changed, not in the ways that matter. My message to him was a confession. It was the first truly honest thing I had done in 15 years. It was me finally admitting to myself and to the person I hurt the most that I had made a catastrophic mistake. It wasn't about fixing us. It was about me finally acknowledging that I had broken us, and that the fault was mine alone. I threw away gold because everyone around me told me it was just glitter. And now I'm left standing in the ruins of a life they built for me, holding nothing but dust. I'm sure you've already heard his side of the story. I'm the monster, the cheating drug addict girlfriend who threw away 4 years of his life. I get it. From the outside, that's exactly what it looks like. But you weren't there. You don't know what it was like inside my head, or inside my house. My life has never really been mine. Before him, it belonged to my family. My world was the space between 4 walls, and those walls were always screaming. My mother's voice sharp and angry, cutting me down for things I didn't do. My brother's fist teaching me to flinch whenever a hand was raised too quickly. My grandmother, who lived with us, spitting bitter words that made me feel small and worthless. My dad was long gone. He got out. I was left behind in a home where you had to fight for every scrap of kindness, and showing any weakness meant you'd get eaten alive. Then I met him. We'll call him my fiancé because that's what he was. He was my secret, my escape. He lived thousands of miles away in another country, but his voice on the phone was my only way out. For 4 years, he was my future. He promised me everything I ever wanted. Quiet home, a family, a baby, a life where I didn't have to be scared all the time. He was going to save me. But promises are just words. And over time, his words started to change. The man who was supposed to be my savior started acting like another guard. My only window to the outside world started to feel like a one-way mirror with him always watching. He didn't like me having female friends. He said they were a bad influence. He didn't want me going to parties or even small get-togethers. My life, every tiny piece of it had to be approved by him. The sweet, caring boy I fell for was slowly replaced by a cold, controlling man on the other end of the line. I was still stuck. Still in that horrible house, still getting screamed at, still feeling trapped. And my escape plan, my fiancé, seemed to be in no hurry to actually get me out. I'd ask him begging, when can I come to you? Let's just set a date, something for me to look forward to. Every single time he'd shut me down. He'd say we weren't ready, that it wasn't the right time, that I needed to be patient. Patient. I was serving a life sentence and he was telling me to just wait in my cell quietly until he decided it was time to unlock the door. He wasn't saving me anymore. He was just controlling me while I rotted. By the summer of 2020, I couldn't breathe. I was completely broken. I needed money to feel like I had some power. But more than that, I needed a reason to leave the house for a few hours a day. There was a greenhouse nearby that was hiring. It was perfect. When I told him about it, he said no. Flat out, he forbade me from taking the job. He went on a rant about how places like that were full of gangs and drugs. It was insane. He was worried about strangers hurting me when my own family was destroying me every single day. For the first time in our relationship, I said no back to him. I took the job. It was the first real decision I had made for myself in years, and it felt terrifying and amazing all at once. And that's where I met Tony. Tony wasn't a promise. He wasn't a plan for the future. He was just there. He worked with me, and he saw me. Not the sad girl on the phone he had to fix, but the actual person standing in front of him. He was funny. He made me laugh, a real laugh. Not the fake one I used with my family. When my fiancé's calls became interrogations. Who were you with today? What did you do? Why didn't you answer my text right away? Tony would just ask how my day was. He listened. My fiancé would yell at me for being tired, for not being cheerful enough for him after I'd spent 10 hours on my feet at work, and another 2 getting screamed at by my mother. But Tony would see the look on my face and just offer me a smoke, no questions asked. He offered me something else too. A way to make all the noise stop. The screaming in my house, the angry voice in my phone, the endless loop of self-hatred in my own head. He offered me meth. I know what you're thinking. But it wasn't a choice to become an addict. It was a choice to be numb. It was a choice to have a few hours where I felt nothing. Where the cage disappeared. And I could just float. So yes, I lied to my fiancé. I lied about everything. I lied about Tony. I lied about the drugs. I had to. My entire life was already a lie. I was pretending to be his perfect, obedient girl, waiting patiently for him while he was turning into someone I didn't even recognize. I was pretending I was okay when I was actually falling apart. Being with Tony was wrong, I know that. Cheating on the man I was supposed to marry was horrible. But it was the only time I felt anything real. A hand holding mine, a person sitting next to me in silence. It was a physical presence, not just an angry, disembodied voice telling me I wasn't good enough. Tony wasn't a replacement for my fiancé. He was an anesthetic for my life. Of course, he started to suspect. He wasn't stupid. He'd see me on video calls and make comments. You're so thin, are you eating? Or why are your pupils so big? His paranoia went into overdrive. The calls weren't about love anymore. They were just a list of accusations. Are you on drugs? Are you sleeping with someone? Who is he? He'd hammer me with questions and I'd deny everything, my voice shaking. Every lie I told just made him angrier, louder. He was right, but what could I do? If I admitted it, I'd lose everything. I'd lose the anesthetic Tony provided, and I'd lose the tiny dying hope of escape that my fiancé represented. I was standing with a foot in 2 different boats, and they were drifting further and further apart. I was about to be torn in 2. I was at work one afternoon, my hands deep in the soil, trying not to think about anything. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was him. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, I pulled it out annoyed, ready to text him that I was busy. But it wasn't a call. It was a picture message. My heart stopped. It was a photo of me and Tony from last weekend. We were outside a convenience store laughing. He had his arm around my shoulder. It was a candid shot taken from across the street. Beneath it, a single line of text from my fiancé. I know everything. I stared at my phone, my hands covered in dirt, the world shrinking down to that single grainy picture. Me. Tony. His arm around me. The convenience store lights glowing behind us. It was such a small, meaningless moment, but he had found it. He had caught me. I know everything. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. My whole body went cold. It felt like I was falling, but I was just standing still in the middle of a row of petunias. My phone started vibrating in my hand, his name flashing on the screen. For a second, I thought about throwing it about, smashing it on the concrete floor, and running. But where would I run? I pressed the green button, my thumbs shaking. I didn't even have time to say hello. You whore! The word hit me so hard I flinched even though he was thousands of miles away. It was pure, unfiltered rage, a sound I had never heard from him before. Not like this. 4 years, Rosie, 4 years I gave you, and you throw it all away to get high with some piece of trash from your work. I tried to speak to lie one last time, but no words came out. What was the point? He had a picture. Don't even try it, he snarled like he could read my mind. Don't you dare lie to me again. I have more. I have everything. And he did. He started listing things off like a prosecutor, reading a list of charges. He had screenshots of texts between me and Tony that I thought I'd deleted. He had messages from some of my coworkers, people I barely spoke to, telling him they'd seen me leaving with Tony. He had been building a case against me for weeks. All that paranoia, I'd brushed off all his angry questions. He wasn't just guessing. He was investigating. My fiancé had become a spy. The person who was supposed to be my partner was treating me like an enemy. And the drugs, he screamed. You look like a skeleton. You think I couldn't see it the way your eyes looked. You're a fucking meth head, Rosie, a junkie. I sank to my knees on the greenhouse floor, the rough plastic cutting into my jeans. Tears were streaming down my face, but I was silent. Every horrible thing he was saying was true. What could I say? Yes, I'm a junkie, but it's only because I couldn't stand the life you left me in anymore. He wouldn't have heard that. All he heard was betrayal. I was juggling two worlds, and they had just collided and exploded. There was a moment in the middle of his yelling where I thought about the baby. The one he'd promised me for years. A desperate, ugly thought flashed through my mind. Times. What if I told him I was pregnant times? Would that fix it? Would it force him to choose me, to save me? But the thought was gone as quickly as it came. It was pathetic. A lie like that wouldn't fix anything. It would just be a bigger, more horrible cage for all of us. The fight must have lasted an hour, but it felt like a lifetime. By the end, his anger was gone, replaced by something much worse, cold, dead silence. We're done, he said, his voice flat. It's over. Don't ever contact me again. Then he hung up. The silence that followed was louder than his screaming. I just knelt there in the dirt, holding a dead phone. My escape plan was gone. My anesthetic was exposed. I had nothing. I was just the monster he said I was. That was December 30th. I somehow finished my shift, my body moving on autopilot while my mind was just white noise. When I got home, my mother started on me right away, yelling about me being late about the dirt on my clothes. Usually I'd fight back or cry or just shrink into myself. But this time I just walked past her, went to my room and shut the door. Her words couldn't touch me anymore. None of it could. I was already at the bottom. The next day I told Tony. I sat in his beat-up car during our lunch break and told him everything. That my fiancé knew that we were over, that I was a cheating drug addict monster. I expected him to laugh, or get weird, or just not care. But he didn't. He just listened, took a long drag from his cigarette, and blew the smoke out the window. "Well," he said, flicking the ash, "you can't stay in that house. It's killing you." He looked at me, his eyes clear for once. "You can move in with me if you want." It wasn't a romantic proposal. It wasn't a promise of a better future. It was just a lifeline. A different place to be. An escape hatch. I said okay. 2 days later, I did it. While my family was out, I packed a single duffel bag. I took my favorite hoodies, a couple of pictures from when I was a kid before everything got so bad, and the little bit of cash I had saved. I looked around my room, the room I had spent my entire life in the cage, where I'd cried and dreamed and planned my escape. Leaving it didn't feel triumphant. It just felt empty. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. I'm writing this from Tony's couch. His apartment is small and smells like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. It's nothing like the clean, perfect home my fiancé and I used to talk about. There's no promise of a baby or a picket fence here. There's just now. I know I'm the villain. I see that. I lied. I cheated. I destroyed a 4-year relationship with someone who at the beginning truly loved me. I broke his heart, and I know he'll tell this story for the rest of his life, and I will always be the monster at the end of it. Maybe I deserve that. But I was trapped. I was in a house that was physically and emotionally crushing me. And I was tied to a man who became a voice on the phone, who wanted to own me, not save me. Every choice I made, every lie I told, was a desperate, ugly attempt to find a way out, to feel something other than pain, or to feel nothing at all. I wasn't trying to ruin his life. I was just trying to survive mine. I don't know if this is freedom. Living here with Tony, working at the greenhouse, wondering where my next dollar will come from. It might just be a different cage, one with different bars. But at least it's one I chose. My husband probably told you his side of the story. I'm sure he made me sound like a monster, a cold-hearted snake who blew up our perfect life for no reason. I get it. From where he's standing, that's probably what it looks like. But lives aren't that simple, and a marriage doesn't just break overnight. It dies slowly. So slowly you don't even notice. Until you're sitting in the dark, wondering when the lights went out. He's a good man. I need to say that first. He's a wonderful father to our kids, and for a long time he was a good husband. He's dependable. If the car makes a weird noise, he knows how to fix it. If the budget is tight, he figures out a plan. He's a rock. But nobody tells you that you can be incredibly lonely even when you're leaning against a rock. You can be dying of thirst while it's raining all around you. For years, I felt like I was disappearing. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a collection of jobs. I was mom, the chauffeur, the cook, the laundry machine, the scheduler. I was wife. The co-signer, the social planner, the other half of a team that ran a household. Our conversations became like business meetings. We'd sit down after the kids were in bed, and he'd pull out his phone to look at the calendar. Okay, soccer practice is Thursday. You have the PTA meeting on Tuesday. I'll need to work late on Wednesday. Did you pay the electric bill? It was all logistics. There was no times us, times anymore. There was just the project of our family. I'd try sometimes. I'd put on a dress he used to like and ask how I looked. He'd glance up from his laptop and say, "Looks good," without ever really seeing me. I stopped trying. What was the point? I was just part of the background, part of the furniture. Useful, necessary, but completely invisible. I remember my friends, and I went on one of our yearly girls' weekends. We were all in our late 30s, drinking cheap wine in a rented cabin, and every single one of us had the same story. The slow fade. The feeling of becoming a ghost in your own life. We weren't bad people. We loved our kids. We even still loved our husbands in a way. We were just erased. They saw what was happening to me. My friend Sarah told me I'd lost my spark. She was right. I was just a pilot light, barely flickering. Then I met Frank. It was nothing dramatic. He was a dad from my son's baseball team. We'd just make small talk on the sidelines. But then he started to actually talk to me. He'd ask about my day, and he wouldn't accept fine as an answer. He'd say, "No, really." "How was it?" And he would listen. He remembered that I hated cilantro and that my favorite author was Stephen King. Tiny, stupid things that my husband had forgotten years ago. When Frank looked at me, he saw times me. Asterisk. Sue. Not the mom, not the wife. Just me. He thought I was funny. He told me I had a beautiful smile. It felt like coming up for air after being underwater for a decade. It started with coffees after we dropped the kids at school. Then it turned into texts during the day. Harmless stuff mostly. Jokes, links to articles, just connection. My friends knew. I told them everything. They were happy for me. I know how that sounds, but you have to understand. They saw it as me finding a little piece of myself again. "You deserve to feel good," Sarah said. "It's just a little fun. It's your secret." I believed her. I told myself it was just a fantasy, a little secret garden I could escape to when the real world felt too gray and suffocating. I never ever wanted to leave my husband or break up my family. I just wanted to feel alive. I thought I could keep these two worlds separate. I thought I was strong enough to build a wall between them. The wall came down so fast I didn't even know what hit me. The physical affair started a few months in. It was a mistake, a line I swore I'd never cross, but it felt inevitable. Being seen led to being touched, and I was so starved for affection that I just folded. We were careful. We met at a cheap hotel on the edge of town, one of those places you'd never go with your family. I told my husband I was meeting my friends for a movie night. It was the third or fourth time we'd done it. It was becoming a routine. A dirty, thrilling, shameful routine. Frank and I were supposed to meet there. I was running a little late, stuck in traffic, and I sent him a quick text. Be there in 10. Room 214. My heart was pounding the way it always did. A mix of guilt and excitement that made me feel sick and alive all at once. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and walked into the lobby. I felt a buzz from my phone and pulled it out. It was a text from my husband. My blood went cold. Funny. I'm here too. My company just booked me a room for the conference tomorrow. Small world. I'm in room 212. I stood there in the dingy hotel hallway, phone in my hand, and I couldn't breathe. The world tilted. Room 212. He was in room 212. My husband. Our room, the one I was supposed to be in with Frank, was 214. The universe had a sick sense of humor. For a second, my brain just short-circuited. I thought times. Maybe it's a coincidence. A crazy, impossible coincidence. Asterisk. Then the door to room 212 opened. It was him. My husband. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't crying. His face was just blank. It was a terrifying, cold emptiness I had never seen before. He looked right through me like I was a ghost. Then his eyes flicked to the door of room 214, which had just opened. Frank stepped out, looking confused. He saw my husband, then he saw me, and the color drained from his face. My husband didn't say a word to him. He just looked at me. Get your things, he said. His voice was flat. Dead. The kids are with my parents. We're done. He turned and walked back into his room, shutting the door with a soft click that sounded louder than a gunshot. The sound echoed in the hallway. I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't work. Frank looked at me, this man who had told me I was the most alive person he'd ever met. He didn't say, I'm so sorry. He didn't say, we'll figure this out. He just turned, walked past me down the hall without a single word, and disappeared around the corner. The man who had made me feel seen couldn't even look at me as he left me in the rubble of my own life. That's when I broke. The double abandonment, the cold fury of my husband, and the silent cowardice of my lover, it was too much. The floor came up to meet me. The world became a blur of ugly carpet patterns and the smell of stale cigarette smoke. The weight of what I had done, the family I had shattered, for a fantasy that wasn't even real, it crushed me. I don't remember much after that. I remember muffled voices, the feeling of being lifted, waking up in a hospital bed felt like a cruel joke. I had tried to escape a life that felt like a prison, and I'd ended up in a real one, locked inside my own head with nothing but my guilt. The doctors said I'd had a complete psychological breakdown. They gave it a fancy name, but all it meant was that my soul had given up. A few days later, a nurse told me my husband was coming to visit. Hope is a terrible, stupid thing. A tiny spark lit up in the darkness. Asterisk. Maybe he wants to understand. Maybe he sees how broken I am. Maybe we can fix this. Asterisk. They had me on medication that made everything feel fuzzy, but I tried to pull myself together. I rehearsed what I would say. I'd explain the loneliness, the invisibility. I'd tell him I never stopped loving him. They wheeled me in my chair into a small, sterile family conference room. He was there, sitting at a table with his father. He looked tired. He looked 10 years older. The moment I saw his face, all my prepared speeches, all my rational explanations, they just vanished. All I saw was my husband, my best friend, my home, and he looked so far away. Before anyone could say anything, I was out of that wheelchair. I didn't even register ripping the IV tape from my arm. It was like an animal instinct. I just had to get to him. I fell on the floor in front of him, my stupid hospital gown gaping at the back, and I grabbed onto his legs. I just held on, burying my face in his jeans, sobbing. It wasn't a plan. It was the only thing my body knew how to do, hold on to the one thing that had ever felt solid. "I'm sorry," I cried over and over. "Please, I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. We can fix this. Please." He didn't move. He just looked down at me, and his voice was full of a pain so deep it scared me. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you hate me so much? Why do you hate our family?" He didn't see a broken woman begging for forgiveness. He saw an enemy, a monster. And that's when I knew I hadn't just broken his heart. I had destroyed his entire picture of me, of us. I had become something unrecognizable to him. As I looked up at him pleading, I saw his face twist. A bright red spot bloomed in the white of his left eye. Then blood started pouring from his nose. Not a trickle. A gush. His father shouted his name. Nurses rushed in. It was chaos. All I could see was the blood. His blood. It was like all the pain I had caused him on the inside was finally bursting out. He was literally breaking because of me. They rushed him out of the room, and I just collapsed a puddle of shame on the cold linoleum floor. I had not only destroyed our marriage, I had physically hurt the man I still loved more than anything. After that, we didn't talk. We texted. It felt safer, I guess. Less chance of anyone bleeding. A few weeks later, after I was released, I sat down one night and couldn't stop thinking about all the things we needed to fix. All the things that had gone wrong. I started typing them into my phone. I didn't even realize what I was doing until I was done. There were 136 of them. A list of everything from relearn how to talk about our feelings, to go on a date once a week, to couples therapy. I sent it to him. Not as a list of demands. It was a desperate prayer. It was me tearing open my chest and showing him everything inside, every thought, every hope, every ounce of effort I was willing to put in. It was me screaming times, "Look, I'm still here. I still want to fight for this. Please, just pick one. Pick anything and let's start there." Asterisk. He texted back a few hours later, "This is too much. It feels like an ultimatum." And that's where we are now. Trapped in two different realities. I send him my shattered heart and he sees it as a weapon. I tell him I'm struggling, that I'm fragile, and he hears it as emotional blackmail. He wants to talk about lawyers and splitting assets, about logistics. But I can't. I need to talk about us. Because if we can't even agree on the language of our own pain, then there really will be nothing left to say. My husband, Mark, probably told you I'm cheating on him. He probably made himself sound like the perfect wronged husband who provides everything only to be betrayed by his ungrateful wife. He's good at painting that picture. It's a work of art he's been perfecting for years with him as the stoic, muscular hero and me as the pretty, slightly unstable accessory on his arm. Let me tell you my side. Our life looks perfect on paper. Mark makes 6 figures. We live in a nice house, have 2 nice cars, and are completely debt-free. He'd list these things off like he was reading his stock portfolio, and in his mind, that's his husbandly duty complete. He even does most of the housework. It's not a partnership, though. It's a performance. Every time he scrubs the counters or perfectly lines up the vacuum marks on the carpet, it's a silent announcement. See? I'm even better at this than you are. I started to feel less like a wife and more like a poorly performing asset he had to manage. We ended up in couples counseling because I was unhappy, which to him was a completely illogical state of being. Why would I be unhappy? He provided. He cleaned. He went to the gym and maintained the handsome physique I'd married. In our sessions, he'd talk about the weight of his feelings and how hard he worked while the therapist nodded. When I tried to explain the crushing loneliness, the feeling of being a ghost in my own home, it was dismissed. My deep, aching sadness was just stubbornness. I felt myself getting smaller and smaller, my voice quieter, my world shrinking to the pristine, silent walls of our home. That's why I took the new job. It was an executive position at a fast-growing IT company, a place with real pressure and real stakes. It was a lifeline. It was my chance to build something that was mine to be valued. For my brain, my strategy, my ideas. Not for how well I complemented Mark's perfect life. The energy at the office was like a drug. It was a world away from the silent order of my house. It's a place filled with sharp, ambitious people. Mark pictured it as some casual tech startup with guys in hoodies playing ping pong. It's not. It's a corporate battleground, and you're expected to dress for the part. So I did. I retired my old tired cardigans and bought tailored blazers, silk blouses and heels that made me feel powerful. I started getting my hair professionally styled. I learned how to do my makeup to look polished and awake, not like the weary ghost I saw every morning. For the first time in almost a decade, I didn't hate looking in the mirror. I felt like myself again. The culture is intense, but the rewards are too. Success is celebrated loudly. When my team landed a massive new client, after a month of sleepless nights, our CEO, Daniel, ordered a celebratory lunch for the whole team from a Michelin star restaurant. He didn't just order pizza, he ordered an experience. I brought home the leftovers duck confit and truffle risotto, thinking Mark and I could share it, that he could taste a piece of my victory. When we smashed our quarterly targets, every single person on the leadership team got a $100 gift card and a bottle of expensive wine. These weren't hush-hush payments. They were trophies, symbols of our hard work. I brought them home to share them, hoping he'd see them and think, wow, my wife is killing it. I'm so proud. I wanted him to be part of my new exciting world. But he never saw it that way. He'd look at the fancy restaurant bag with a weird tightness in his jaw. The expensive wine would be put on the rack without a word. The gift cards would be tossed on the counter as if they were tainted. His suspicion was like a poison gas, colorless and odorless, slowly filling every room in our house. A few weeks ago, Daniel hosted a strategy dinner for the senior executives at his home. He's divorced a brilliant guy who lives and breathes the company. He's tough, but he respects me and listens to my ideas, treating me like the competent professional he hired me to be. His house was stunning. It was modern with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was everything I'd been dreaming of for us. Spacious, full of light, a place where you could really live and entertain. I kept thinking about the cramped little patio we had and the kitchen I wanted to renovate. This was possible. This was the kind of life hard work could buy. I was so excited, so inspired. I discreetly took a couple of pictures on my phone of the incredible view from his kitchen and the open-plan living area, not to be weird, but to show Mark. I wanted to say, look at this, we could do this. This is what I'm working for times us, asterisk. When I got home that night, he was already in bed pretending to be asleep. The next day, I tried to show him the pictures, my phone in my hand, my voice bubbling with excitement. You have to see the house my boss has I started. It's incredible. The view from the kitchen alone is... He didn't even glance at the phone at first. He just looked at me. His face, which used to look at me with love, was a cold, hard mask. Your boss's house? He said, his voice flat. Yeah, Daniel. He had the leadership team over for dinner. Look, I said, pushing the phone toward him. He took it and swiped through the two photos. There was no wonder in his eyes, no shared dream. Just a dark, gathering storm. He handed the phone back to me, his fingers barely touching mine. So you're spending your evenings inside his house now, he stated. Not as a question, but as an accusation. My heart sank. It wasn't about a house, or a dream, or our future. In his mind, my success wasn't ours. It was mine. And it was a threat. Every bottle of wine, every gift card, every late night at the office was being collected and filed away as evidence for a trial that was already happening in his head. And these pictures, the ones I took, with so much hope for our future, had just become his star exhibits. I just stared at him, the phone feeling heavy and cold in my hand. My excitement evaporated, replaced by a familiar sinking feeling of dread. It was a team dinner, Mark. For the senior leadership. There were 6 of us there. At his house, he pressed his arms crossed over his chest. That was his power stance, the one that said, "I am the reasonable one here and you are being hysterical." Why his house? Why not a restaurant? I don't know, because he wanted to. It was nicer than any restaurant, I said, my voice rising in frustration. You're completely missing the point. The point wasn't times whose times house it was. The point was times the house itself, asterisk. What we could build. What I'm working towards. For us. He let out a short, bitter laugh. For us? Don't lie to me. This whole new you isn't for us. The expensive clothes, the makeup, spending hours on your hair. Who is that for, huh? Because you sure as hell don't do it on the weekends when it's just me. Every accusation was a perfectly aimed dart, and they all hit their mark. All the little resentments he'd been collecting were finally being brought out for display. The fancy leftovers, the gift cards, the late nights. He listed them off one by one, his voice getting colder with each item. That $100 gift card. The ridiculously expensive wine. You think I'm stupid. You think I don't see what's happening. That's when I snapped. The exhaustion from work, the constant feeling of being misunderstood, the loneliness, it all boiled over. What do you think is happening, Mark? I yelled, throwing my hands up in the air. Do you think I'm part of some corporate cult? No, I'm part of a successful company that rewards its employees. For the first time in 10 years, I feel like I matter for something other than being Mrs. Mark last name. I feel smart. I feel capable. I'm sorry if that's an inconvenience for you. I give you everything? He shot back, his voice booming in our pristine, quiet living room. A 6-figure life, no debt, you wanted for nothing. I even do all the chores. What more could you possibly want? There it was. The performance. The list of his contributions as if our marriage was a business transaction and he had more than fulfilled his side of the contract. I want a partner, not a CEO of our household, I screamed. Tears finally starting to burn in my eyes. I don't want a husband who vacuums as a way to prove a point. I want someone who asks me about my day and actually listens. I want someone who sees me, the person, not just a line item in his portfolio of success. When we're in therapy, you talk about the weight of your feelings, but when I try to talk about mine, you call it stubbornness. Do you have any idea how it feels to be erased in your own home? His face went rigid. The self-righteous anger was replaced by something darker, something uglier. He took a step toward me, his voice dropping to a low, venomous hiss. Are you sleeping with him? The air went out of my lungs. Of all the things he could have thought of, all the ways he could have twisted my newfound happiness, he went there, to the easiest, most insulting conclusion. What did you just say? I whispered, my whole body trembling. Daniel, your boss. The brilliant divorced man in the big empty house. Are you sleeping with him? Is that why he's giving you all these gifts? Is that what you have to do to get ahead? The slap was a reflex. I didn't even think about it. My hand just flew up and connected with his cheek. The sound of it echoed in the silence that followed. We both stood there frozen and breathing heavily, staring at each other in shock. The man I had loved for a decade was looking at me like I was a stranger, a whore who had just been caught. And I was looking at a man whose insecurity was so deep, so consuming, that he would rather believe I was a cheater than believe I was simply successful on my own. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked into our guest room, and locked the door. The next few days were a special kind of hell. We moved around each other in our perfect house like ghosts with unfinished business. The silence was thick and suffocating. Every morning I would get ready for work, putting on my armor, the blazer, the heels, the confident makeup, and every glance he shot my way was filled with poison. Work, my one safe place, now felt tainted. I'd be in a meeting with Daniel discussing quarterly projections, and a part of my brain would scream times, "Mark thinks you're sleeping with this man." Asterisk. It was humiliating. We had a counseling session that Thursday. The entire drive there was silent. I half expected him to turn the car around. When we sat down on the familiar couch in the therapist's office, Mark didn't wait to be asked. He just started talking, laying out his case like a prosecutor in a courtroom. He spoke calmly and logically, which made it all the more chilling. He presented his evidence, my new wardrobe, the late nights, the gifts, and finally Exhibit A. The pictures of the inside of my CEO's house. He presented it all as an open and shut case of infidelity. I just sat there numb. I didn't defend myself. What was the point? He wasn't interested in the truth. He was interested in his story, the one where he was the perfect wronged husband. The story where finally the therapist turned to me. "What do you have to say to this?" I took a deep breath and looked at Mark. Really looked at him. At the man who measured his love in dollars and his partnership in completed chores. The man who needed to be the provider, the hero, the stronger one. I finally understood. "He's right," I said, my voice quiet but clear. The therapist looked surprised. Mark looked vindicated. Everything he's saying is right from his point of view. He can't imagine any other reason for me to change. He can't comprehend that I might want to build something for myself. That my worth isn't tied to his income or his approval. He sees my success. Not as our success, but as a threat to his position. As the head of this household. I turned my body to face Mark fully. This isn't about Daniel. This has never been about another man. This is about you. You're terrified. You're so blinded by this role you've created for yourself that you can't see me anymore. Our marriage isn't failing because I'm looking for a way out. It's failing because I'm finally building a sense of self, and you can't stand that it has nothing to do with you. I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if he can ever unsee the ugly picture he's painted. To save our marriage, I'd have to shrink myself back down to become the ghost in the house again. And I don't think I can do that. I'm not sure I want to. He thinks I'm cheating on him with my boss. The truth is, I'm cheating on the quiet, unhappy woman I used to be, with the person I'm finally becoming. And I think that's what he really can't forgive. I know what you think of me. You've probably heard her side, and I don't blame you for hating me. I hate me too. Most of the time I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the man staring back. But I need you to understand, I never wanted to hurt her. Everything I did, all the good things, they were real. They were my desperate attempt to be the man she deserved. Our wedding in 2016, that was supposed to be it for me. The end of the old life and the start of a new one. Before her, I was just a mess. Always anxious, always feeling like I was playing a part, waiting for someone to call me out as a fake. She was the first person who made me feel real. When she looked at me, I felt like the man I always wanted to be. So I decided I would be him. I would be a husband, a good stable man. Every good memory we made was another brick I was putting in a wall. I was trying to wall off the broken part of myself, the part that craved noise and chaos and destruction. The first year of our marriage was good. We were happy. But in the quiet moments when the TV was off and she was asleep next to me, I'd hear it. A little whisper in the back of my head, telling me I was a fraud, that I didn't deserve any of this, that a good man wouldn't feel this restless emptiness. The only thing that made the voice shut up was drinking. A few beers, a glass of whiskey, and suddenly I was him again, the charming, confident guy she fell in love with. The guy who wasn't terrified all the time. The first time it happened was about 4 months after the wedding, with her best friend. I swear to God it wasn't a plan. It was late, we were all drunk, and it was just a stupid, horrible mistake. The next morning the shame was so heavy I could barely breathe. It should have been the biggest wake-up call of my life. It should have scared me straight, but it didn't. It did something worse. It broke my brain. The guilt was too much. The man who loved my wife, the man who held her and promised her forever, couldn't have done that. It was impossible. So my mind just split. It created a box, and it put the monster who did that thing inside it. From that day on, there were two of me. There was the husband who loved his wife more than anything, and there was the other guy, the addict. The addict didn't care about anything but the fix. He was fueled by booze and that bottomless pit of self-hatred I carried around. The cheating wasn't about sex, not really. It was about feeling something, anything other than the shame. It was a quick hit of adrenaline, a moment of validation from a stranger online, or an escort who didn't know me. It was a way to prove the voice in my head, right, I was a piece of garbage. Each time the addict would get his fix, and then I'd wake up the next morning as the husband again, swimming in disgust and fear. And I would throw myself even harder into being the perfect husband. I'd cook her favorite dinner plan, a surprise weekend trip, tell her how much I loved her. I was praying, just praying that if I acted the part well enough, it would eventually kill the other guy for good. Some of the worst times were when she was right there. I remember one of our house parties. She was in the living room with our friends laughing, and I was in our bedroom with someone else. People think that's a sign of a guy who wants to get caught. It's not. It's the addict's recklessness. When the monster needed a fix, the rest of the world just went blurry. My wife, my home, my entire life would just become background noise. The only thing that was real was the chase. Then she got pregnant, and we bought the house. This was it. This was the final move, the ultimate fortification. A baby. Our own home. A real family. I was so genuinely happy, so full of hope. I thought, this has to be enough. A life this good, this real. It has to be heavy enough to crush the monster, to starve him out for good. And for a while, it worked. The voice went quiet. I wasn't drinking as much. I was just focused on her, on the baby, on painting the nursery and building the crib. I really, truly believed I had won. I was going to be a father. I was going to be the man I was always meant to be. We were 3 months pregnant boxes, still half unpacked in our dream house, and I had never felt more certain about anything in my life. I was safe. We were safe. We were sitting on the couch looking at something on my phone together. I think it was a list of baby names. I was laughing, and I felt her head resting on my shoulder. It was one of those perfect quiet moments. And then the screen lit up. A notification banner slid down from the top. It was a message from a name she didn't know. And the preview was just a few words, but it was enough. My blood went cold. The whole world just stopped. I saw her eyes flick from the baby names up to the banner. I watched her read the words. I watched her perfect happy face start to crumble in slow motion. The wall I'd spent our entire marriage building was about to be vaporized. She pulled her head off my shoulder and just stared at the screen for a second. Then she looked at me, her expression completely blank. "Who is that?" she asked. My brain went into overdrive, trying to spin 1,000 lies in a single second. It's a coworker. It's spam. It's a wrong number. But I couldn't get a single word out. My mouth was dry. I just looked at her. And she knew. The way she pulled away from me, just that little bit of distance she created on the couch, felt like a canyon opening up between us. The interrogation that followed wasn't shouting and screaming. It was worse. It was quiet. It was methodical. She took my phone and her hands were perfectly steady. She asked me again, her voice flat. Who is she? I started with the first lie, the one I had practiced in my head just in case. A stupid flirtation, a mistake it meant nothing. I watched her scroll through my phone, her thumb moving up the screen, and with every swipe another piece of my life fell away. She found more. More names. More messages. Every question she asked was a nail. And every lie I told was just the hammer driving it in deeper. The demolition went on for hours. She'd find something, ask me about it. I'd minimize it, and then she'd find something else that proved I was lying. The worst part was when she found the messages from 4 months after our wedding from her best friend. I watched her face go from hurt to confused, and then to a look of such profound betrayal that it physically hurt to see. She didn't cry, not then. She just looked at me like I was a complete stranger. Like she was seeing the monster for the first time. She found the emails with the escort, the dating app profiles, the chats. All the bricks from the wall I had built came crashing down, and I was just sitting there buried in the rubble. Finally, she put the phone down on the coffee table. She stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. "Get out," she said. It was the first time her voice broke. Being kicked out of my own home, the one we had just bought for our baby, should have been the lowest point of my life. But it was a relief. I deserved it. I deserved worse. I slept in my car for 2 nights before getting a cheap motel room. I spent days in a fog just replaying that night over and over. Seeing her face. That's when I finally did the one thing I should have done years ago. I walked into an AA meeting. Then I found an SA meeting. Sitting in those church basements listening to other people tell my story was the first time I didn't feel completely alone with the monster. These people understood the switch. They understood the craving, the self-hatred, the double life. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. It was a path. I started working the steps. I was sober. I was going to meetings every day. I was finally, for the first time, being honest with myself about who I was. After a few weeks, she called. The dog was having a hard time without me, and with her being pregnant, she needed help. She said I could come back, but I had to stay in the guest room. No exceptions. It was the tiniest sliver of hope, and I grabbed it with both hands. I moved into the guest room and followed her rules perfectly. I respected her space. I didn't push. I just tried to be useful to show her I was changing. I went to my meetings, I did my work, and I just wanted to be near her, to be near the goodness I had almost completely destroyed. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. I was making progress. But the addict is a patient bastard. It waits. It hides in the corners and waits for you to be tired or lonely or weak. And one night it found me. I was sitting alone in the guest room, scrolling on my laptop. She was asleep down the hall. I was just lonely. That's all it took. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was on LinkedIn, for Christ's sake. A stupid professional networking site. A message popped up. An old contact. And the conversation just turned. The switch flipped. It was fast, almost instant. The monster took over, and before I really knew what was happening, it was done. An online relapse. The shame was immediate and crushing. It was 10 times worse than before, because this time I knew better. I was in recovery. I was supposed to be getting well. I hid it. I deleted the messages and shut the laptop, my heart pounding. I told myself it was a one-time slip. A mistake. I could handle it. I could get back on track without telling her. Telling her would destroy that sliver of hope, and I couldn't bear that. But we had a formal disclosure scheduled with our marriage counselor. A big, terrifying meeting where I was supposed to lay out every single secret, every single betrayal once and for all. No more trickled truth. The week leading up to it was torture. I knew I had to either tell her about the LinkedIn slip-up, or I had to start our new foundation with another lie. We sat in the counselor's office, my wife looking so fragile but so determined. I started talking. I went through the timeline, all the ugly details I'd hidden before. And then I got to the part about coming home, about living in the guest room. I took a breath, looked at her, and I knew what I was about to do. It was like holding a grenade and knowing I had to pull the pin. I told her about the relapse. I watched the last bit of hope drain from her eyes. It was one thing to be betrayed by the man I was before. It was another thing entirely to be betrayed by the man who was supposedly in recovery, the man who was trying to heal with her. I hadn't just cheated on her again. I had let her start to hope, let her invest in my recovery, only to prove that I was still the same broken, untrustworthy person. I had poisoned the wound she was just starting to clean. I saw it all clearly then. My greatest failure wasn't all the affairs. It wasn't the lies or the drinking. My greatest failure was ever believing I could build a life strong enough to protect her, while the thing she needed protection from was living inside my own skin. I had just let him out right in front of her one last time. I'm pretty sure my husband has written about me online. So if you've read a story about a crazy pregnant wife who threw a fork at her loving, patient husband, then hi, it's me. I'm the monster. But I guess he forgot to mention how he created me. When we were dating, he was my everything. Not in a clingy, weird way, but in a way that made me feel totally safe. He saw me. When I was sad, he knew why before I did. When we argued, he'd sit down, look me right in the eye, and we would talk it out. Sometimes for hours. It didn't matter how mad we were. We always found our way back to each other. I never once felt like he was going to leave me. The wedding was supposed to be the start of forever. For me, it was the start of watching my husband slowly disappear. The arguments started becoming more frequent, which is normal, I guess. But the way he handled them changed completely. He just stopped. He would sit on the couch, his face a total blank, and just wait for me to run out of steam. He called it de-escalating. He said he was trying not to make things worse. What it felt like was being locked in a room by myself. He was right there, but he was gone. I was fighting with a ghost. He would say, "Okay, I'm sorry," with this dead look in his eyes, not because he was sorry, but because he just wanted the noise to stop. Every empty apology felt like a tiny little rejection, a confirmation that I was just an annoyance he had to manage. When I found out I was pregnant, I cried. Not just because I was happy, but because I was so relieved. I thought, this will fix it. This will bring him back. A baby is real. It's permanent. It's a piece of both of us. He can't check out on this. He can't disappear on our child. And for a little while I was right. He was so happy. He held me and kissed my stomach, and for the first time in a long time I felt the man I married was actually in the room with me again. That feeling didn't last. Pregnancy wasn't some beautiful, glowing experience for me. It was miserable. I was sick all the time. I couldn't sleep, and my body felt like it belonged to a stranger. On top of that, the depression I fought so hard to beat back when I was a teenager came roaring back. It felt like my own brain was attacking me and all the hormones were giving it extra ammunition. I've never felt so alone or out of control in my entire life. All I wanted was my husband. I just needed him to hold me to see I was struggling and to tell me we'd get through it. Instead, he pulled away even more. His disappearing act got worse. If I was too sick to do the dishes, the one dirty plate I left in the sink was proof that I was failing. If he came home and immediately put on his headphones to play video games, it felt like he was escaping to a world where I didn't exist. He had his escape, but I was trapped in this body with his screaming in my head, and I had nowhere to go. So I got louder. I know I did. I would yell, I would cry, I would beg him to just look times at me to talk to me. I just wanted a reaction. I wanted him to get angry, to fight back, to show me there was still someone in there who cared enough to argue. But I got nothing. Just the same placid, empty stare. I felt like I was drowning, and he was standing on the beach calmly watching the tide pull me under. The night of the fork incident, I can't even remember what the argument was about. It doesn't matter. It was the same argument we always had, me screaming to be seen and him sitting there like a stone statue. I was so desperate. I felt like I was invisible, like my voice wasn't making a sound. I needed to do something that would make a noise loud enough to break through the wall he had built around himself. I saw the fork on the end table next to me, and I just grabbed it and threw it in his direction. I wasn't trying to hit him, not really. I just needed to make something happen. It hit him on the cheek right below his eye. It left a small scratch. And for the first time in months, his expression changed. The blank look was gone. He looked at me and he was scared. Genuinely afraid. Of me. In that moment, I saw what he saw, a monster. And a part of me just broke. After that, he started actually leaving. He'd say, "I can't deal with this," and go to his parents' house for the night. Sometimes for 2 nights. He called it giving us space, but I knew what it was. He was practicing. He was trying on a new life without me in it. And it was getting more and more comfortable. The final nail in the coffin for me was when he sat me down a few weeks ago. He had this serious look on his face, and I thought, okay, this is it. He's going to talk to me. He's finally going to engage. Instead, he told me he thought I needed to see a psychiatrist. He didn't say, "I'm worried about us, maybe we should try therapy." He said, "You are broken and you need to go get fixed." He'd already decided I was the problem. My pain, my fear, my depression, it wasn't real to him. It was just a chemical imbalance that was making his life inconvenient. I told him to get out. I screamed it. It was the worst thing he could have possibly said. He left for his parents' place again after that fight. He's been there for 3 days. It's been quiet. Too quiet. I spent most of yesterday just crying, feeling so defeated. I have my regular OB appointment tomorrow morning. A few minutes ago, the receptionist from the doctor's office called to confirm the time. It was a normal call until the very end. She said, "Okay, see you tomorrow at 10, and doctor." Miller said to tell you she's looking forward to following up on the concerns your husband shared with her. I hung up the phone. For a few long seconds I didn't move. I just stood in the kitchen staring at the wall, the words echoing in my head. Asterisk. The concerns your husband shared with her. Asterisk. He went to my doctor. He went behind my back to the one person I am supposed to trust with my body and my baby, and painted me as a crazy person. The betrayal was so total, so complete, that it felt like ice water flooding my veins. This wasn't about concern. This was about building a case. All the little pieces clicked into place. His quiet detachment, his nights away, his suggestion, I see a psychiatrist. He wasn't just avoiding fights. He was gathering evidence. He was laying the groundwork to leave me, and he was making sure everyone would be on his side when he did. The crazy pregnant wife and the poor long-suffering husband. My hands were shaking. I called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm and cautious, the way you'd talk to a wild animal you don't want to startle. "Hey," he said. "Is everything okay?" "You need to come home," I said. My voice was flat. All the screaming had burned out of me. All that was left was this cold, hard stone in my chest. "We need to talk." He hesitated. "I don't know if that's a good idea right now. Things are pretty heated." "No, they're not," I said. "They're not heated at all. Just come get the rest of your things, and we'll talk." An hour later, he walked in. He had a couple of empty boxes with him. He didn't look at me, just started moving toward the bedroom. "The office called," I said. He froze. "My doctor's office. They called to confirm my appointment for tomorrow." He slowly turned to face me. He had his careful, neutral face on. "Okay." They said Dr. Miller was looking forward to following up on the concerns you shared with her. There it was. A flicker of panic in his eyes. He was caught. "I was just worried about you," he said, the words coming out practiced and smooth. "Your mood swings the anger." I thought she should know. "My mood swings," I repeated. The cold stone in my chest started to feel hot. "You mean my reaction to my husband completely disappearing, to him sitting there with dead eyes while I beg him to talk to me? That's what you were so worried about." "This is what I'm talking about," he said, holding up his hands like he was calming a horse. "You're escalating. I was trying to get you help." "No, you were trying to get me labeled," I shot back. "First you want me to see a psychiatrist to get medicated so I'll be quiet and convenient for you. When I say no, you go to my OBGYN to poison her against me." "What was your plan?" "To tell her I'm an unfit mother before the baby is even born. To build a case so you could take my child away from me." "That's ridiculous. I would never." "Wouldn't you?" I took a step closer. For the first time, he didn't back away. He just stood there, and the blankness, the emptiness I hated so much settled over his face again. He was checking out. Right in front of me. He was disappearing one last time. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice quiet. "Final? I'm done." My breath hitched. I knew what was coming, but hearing it was different. It was a physical blow. "I want a divorce." There it was. The sentence I had spent the last year fighting against in the ugliest way I knew how. I had screamed, I had cried, I had thrown a fork, all to try and stop him from saying those 4 words. And here they were. All the fight just vanished. It was like a switch was flipped off inside me. I had been holding up this massive weight for so long, and I just let it go. It crashed down around me, and I didn't even have the energy to flinch. I just stood there in the wreckage. I must have looked strange because his expression changed from guarded to confused. He was expecting me to scream, to cry, to throw something else. But I had nothing left. He had won. The quiet he wanted so badly, he was finally going to get it. I just nodded. Okay. His face, if possible, went even more blank. This wasn't part of the script he'd practiced in his head. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I wrapped my arms around my stomach, around our baby. You can get your stuff. I walked over to the armchair in the corner and sank into it. I watched him, this man who was my husband, as he moved silently through our apartment, a stranger packing up the ghost of a life we were supposed to have. He folded his clothes, packed his video game console, took his toothbrush from the bathroom. He worked with a quiet efficiency that told me he had been planning this for a long, long time. Every packed item was another shovel of dirt on the grave of our marriage. When he was done, he stood by the door with his 2 boxes. He looked at me, sitting in the chair. We'll have to talk about everything else. The logistics, he said. Logistics. That's what we were now. A set of problems to be solved. A checklist to be completed. I'll have my dad call you, he said, and then he opened the door and walked out. He closed it gently behind him without a sound. I sat there in the silence for what felt like hours. He thinks he escaped a monster. He thinks he's finally free of the crazy woman who screamed and made his life a living hell. He'll tell his parents and his friends, and they'll all nod and say he did the right thing, that he's lucky to be out. They'll see the scratch on his face from the fork, and it will be all the proof they need. He'll never understand that the monster didn't just appear. He created her. He built her piece by piece with every empty apology, every blank stare, every silent retreat. He starved me of connection for so long that I became feral. I was screaming for help and he just heard noise. I was terrified of him leaving, and my terror is what finally drove him away. I put a hand on my belly and felt a kick. A tiny real flutter of life inside me. I started to cry, but not in the loud, angry way I had before. These were quiet, hot tears for the baby who will never know her father the way I once did. And for the woman who has to figure out how to be a mother all by herself. He didn't just walk out on a monster. He walked out on us.